Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Harrison Township Planning Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, July 28th, 2022. It is just about 7:07, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So with that, Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Member Bacha, absent. Member Devlin?
Here.
Member Bloom, excused. Member Mulder?
Here.
Member Tominello?
Here.
Member Oparka, here. Chair Murray?
Present. Thank you. May I have approval of the agenda as presented, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for July 28th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Mulder. Thank you, Ms. Devlin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Will you please read our first hearing this evening?
Case number 16-22-PUD, Common Sale Investment Group, 26755 Ballard.
Okay, and this is the Common Sale Investment Group. A final review of proposed PUD for an affordable independent living. We have before us the minutes from our last special hearing. And then additionally, our engineer's notes letter, our planner's notes and letter, information from our fire chief, and we have the site plan from the applicant. We have a couple of letters from residents, and with that, I am going to turn it over to our planner to give us a once-over on PUD, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. For the benefit of especially those in the audience who aren't familiar with this process, I just wanted to share that this is a request for a planned unit development. They had a conceptual review which was held at the Planning Commission last month. This is what's called the formal planned unit development review stage. The township's zoning ordinance requires this two-stage review process. The formal stage is where there is a public hearing that was noticed in accordance with state law. That's this evening. The proposal and the applicant has a presentation that they will go through, but very quickly, this is a proposal to construct a multiple family apartment building, a senior independent living facility. The property is slightly more than 5 acres in size. They are proposing a 3-story building with 74 total units. The units will be affordable, age-restricted units, 55 and over. The 52 of the units will be 1-bedroom units and 22 will be 2-bedroom units. So the Planning Commission is given the responsibility of holding the public hearing. The Planning Commission, after the public hearing is finished, ultimately will have the opportunity to discuss and deliberate. And you could this evening or at a subsequent meeting make a decision, approval or denial of the request. Your decision would be a recommendation of approval or denial. It would ultimately then, your recommendation will be brought forward to the Township Board. They have the final say for approval or denial of a planned unit development. So even if it's recommended for denial or recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, there's still that next step, which would be Township Board final approval or denial. With that said, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so we have in front of us the application, the site plan, the development impact statement, and a draft PUD agreement. We were also presented previously with the documentation. I want to say it's the PUD or the actual site master. I want to call it a bylaws. Rules and bylaws. Thank you very much. And I want to ask Rosemary if you wanted to speak to that before we get started at all. You had an opportunity to review.
Yes, I had an opportunity to review the planned unit development agreement, and the agreement is in a substantially
Could you speak up,
acceptable.
please?
Yeah,
We want to hear you.
I've had an opportunity to review the agreement. It is in a substantially compliant form, but the nuts and bolts of it will have to be decided upon and worked between the township and the applicant in the event that this matter is approved by the township board, because we can't do that until we know exactly what is approved, what's not approved. But other than that, it's just like the last PUD. They've presented an agreement, so you can keep moving forward at this point.
Excellent. Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, is the applicant available, please? Mr. Toomey, how are you?
Good, how are you today?
Good. Please come forward, and I think you know the role, loud and clear.
I got a loud voice, that's for
Okay,
sure.
thank you very much. And I'm gonna ask the gallery, I understand you're passionate, but I'm gonna ask you to please keep your comments and your gestures to yourself until public hearing is open. Please give the applicant an opportunity to share his information uninterrupted. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Well, thank you for the second time being here. And furthermore, I want to, even though there's a lot of you, and I met with many of you last month, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with me on your front porches and voicing. I'm saying thank you to the audience for the folks that were on Ballard Street that let me speak with them when I toured and came to their houses to say hello and introduce myself. So I just wanted to thank you for that. We are excited about this opportunity. Common Sale Investment Group is headquartered out of Brighton, Michigan. We are senior housing developers and operators throughout 8 states. And Cleveland Housing Network is out of Cleveland, obviously, but they have a presence in Michigan. They're a nonprofit that is dedicated to their mission of building and supporting seniors through affordable housing. The development that you're seeing here today is what was described. It is independent living, affordable housing for individuals that are above 55 years old, primarily at 60% of area median income. We're going to talk about what that income bracket is, who they are, and why we're trying to serve this population in Harrison Township. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Jim to talk more about the architecture, and then we'll have other conversation with respect to the project as a whole.
Hello, I'm Jim Pappas. Nice to see you all again. A little bit of project overview. We saw this slide last time. The address is 26755 Ballard Street. The proposed use is senior affordable. One of the things you'll notice from their last meeting, we have reduced, based on the input of the Planning Commission, we've reduced the number of units down to 74. We see an estimated investment of about $20 million in this project. You can see with the breakdown on the AMI that 8 units are based for 30% of AMI, 8 for 40%, but the majority are at 60% of AMI. It is a 9% tax credit housing project, and the goal tonight is to get to rezone the existing property to PUD. The site plan is similar. It's still 5.2 acres. The current zoning is R1, and we are proposing at the PUD. As part of this project, we do have 3,200 square feet of interior amenity space for the residents. As a porte cochere, there's a dog park, a courtyard for residents, a community garden, and various others incorporated into the design. One of the most important slides I'd like to show tonight is the changes that we've made from our last meeting. We still are requesting the deviation on the 40-acre to the 5-acre size of the PUD. However, on the maximum height, previously we were 38 feet. We've reduced that height to 32, so we now comply with the zoning ordinance. With regard to the maximum length of the building, we were previously 75 foot over. Now we've reduced that to 191, so it's only 41 foot over the maximum length. With regard to landscape setbacks, we've modified that as well. We previously were requesting a deviation of 30 foot at the rear, and now we've reduced that to 15. And with regard to screening, we have added a vinyl fence along the adjacent single-family property. And again, finally, the big item is the request from the Planning Commission to reduce the amount of units. We have reduced that to 74 from the 80 previously requested. Some of the elevations that we see here, the east and the west, these are side elevations that would be facing the existing remaining hospital building, and then the opposite on the west to the single family. We've changed that and modified it to a flat roof to reduce the height of the overall building. You can see on the southern exposure elevation that is the face that faces the Ballard Street elevation up close. Some other considerations that we took into play, there were some questions that came up. I'd like to show this. This is our actual building with the planning along the streetscape to show you that with the trees in place. This is to scale. Our building is shown at the 32 feet height. The adjacent residential property to the left of the screen is 20-foot height. There is 139 feet between that adjacent single-family residence and the proposed building. And then you can see the existing vacant hospital on the right side of the screen, which is approximately 25-foot height. We are proposing street planning, and this is in line with the landscape design that we proposed. These are the trees, those are the locations, so this graphic effectively shows you what the planting will look like. And now I'll turn it over to Zach.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. So, from the last meeting to visiting with individuals, what we're attempting to do here is to discuss with you, whether it's with respect to the height of the building, showing the adjacencies of the building, items that were considered, and items that okay. So the items that were considered within those discussions. One of the items of concern, or what's going to happen to property values. So what this shows here is within the recent sale price within the last 36 months of a third of a mile away from a HEPA 1 and 2, okay, this shows to you 13 different sale comps that have occurred over the last 36 months. Comparing.
Not in the middle of a neighborhood, though. What happens in the middle of a
Excuse me.
neighborhood?
Please.
So what I'm suggesting here is that from the previous sale price, so take the first one for instance on Campo Lane, from 1997 to 2020, the previous sale price in 97 was $135,000, versus in 2022, that was $180,000. If you take the average of all of those different sale comps over the last 10 years, you're seeing that there's a property value increase of 66%. What I am not suggesting is that the presence of senior, independent, affordable living increases property values. What I am suggesting is that it does not decrease property values. I cannot correlate the two, but I can...
Excuse me, I've asked politely, please, keep your comments to yourself while the applicant is speaking. Give him that courtesy. Thank you.
What this chart would suggest is that while I cannot correlate the increase, what I can say is that a HEPA has not resulted in property value decrease. Next slide, please. As far as traffic, that was another concern that was voiced as we walked and we had this meeting. So what this shows in column A, the proposed PUD, are weekday daily trips, 240 for 74 dwelling units of senior affordable housing. This was done by using Mike Palmier. What estimates and assumptions were used when we calculated this?
Well, all of the, and I'm Mike Palmier with Giffords Webster. We're the civil engineers and surveyors. All of the estimating for the trips are used, we use the ITE, the Institute of Traffic Engineers, guidelines for estimating trips.
Very much. So it's a
And I
third.
think your planner and your engineer would support that that's the appropriate guidelines.
So using that appropriate guidelines and a third party to make those assumptions. What we're showing here is that our proposed development would generate 240 trips. That's highlighted in the red. If you go to column B where it says by right RM1, today it is zoned RM1. You could build 38 units today, right now, without any rezoning, by right. That would generate 320 trips. So we're right now 80 trips below, if built today for 38 units, what would be built by right without a rezoning. Okay? Now, current conditions is 885. Historical conditions when the hospital was open with the medical office building and the single-family homes was 1,500 trips. So if I take column E, where it says E equals A plus C, which is proposed PUD to the current, that's 1,100 trips. Versus the variance, which is against the historical conditions when the hospital was open, we are generating with this development 400 less trips when that hospital was open. So trying to address the concerns of traffic, that when the hospital was open, it is less trips than what would have otherwise been. Next slide, please. So future land use. In 2015, the DDA was established. You've seen this slide before. And when that DDA was established, there was a 2015 waterfront redevelopment plan that was established. In that plan, it suggests, as you can see, if I can use this thing, that this is to be rezoned to planned unit development. Our site is that 5.2 acres. Within that planned unit development, it calls out for senior housing, also a diversity of housing options. We are directly aligned with the goals of the 2015 waterfront redevelopment plan. In addition to that, there's a short-term objective within the DDA TIF plan that states that there should be an amendment to the zoning code to allow for these types of uses. 7 years later, we are the impetus for that rezoning. Next slide, please. So what we heard as well with respect to public benefit. We came last time with some public benefits, and this time we're coming with even more public benefits. Housing demand. We're going to get into that in more detail about affordable housing and senior living and population, but we're providing a needed amount of 74 units of housing for seniors in this community. We're also creating jobs. We're creating 209 short-term construction jobs. We're also creating 6 full-time permanent positions for folks that will live or that will work in this building. Infrastructure improvements, we'll talk about that too with respect to the civil work that will be done. Recreational amenities, address transportation, event programming, financial literacy, and sidewalk improvements through a partnership with the Tucker Senior Center. I have met with the Tucker Senior Center. We're going to talk about how this project would create synergies with the Tucker Senior Center. Congregate care. We'll talk about the aging population in the United States all the way down to Harrison Township and how aging in place creates longer life expectancy as well as happiness. The other item is blight and vacancy elimination. Next to this building, next to this site is a blighted vacant hospital. We believe that by developing the land next to it, it will incentivize somebody else by increasing the property value of that blighted site to redevelop it. Next slide, please. The demographic summary. You've seen this slide before, and I want to point out 2 things in particular. In a 20-minute radius, bullet point number 2, the average cost of living in an independent facility is $3,300 a month. The average income of someone living in Harrison Township that is 65 plus is approximately $45,000. That makes up 20% of the population. Someone making $44,000 a year between Social Security and retirement income cannot afford $3,300 a month. And we are providing the housing so those folks can live and stay in Harrison Township. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we want to talk about housing demand. These are the affordable housing projects within a 20-minute radius of Harrison Township. What you see here are a couple of things. First is the occupancy, or for that matter, the vacancy, is less than 1% all the way from New Baltimore, Shelby Township, East Point, Harrison, and Sterling Heights, averaging about a 99% occupancy. There's a wait list at a HEPA. The average rents within that is $863. We are right in line with that at $886, with units that are significantly larger at $725 on average as compared to $561. So we're here to provide larger units for an area that does not have enough housing, and it is demanded, and residents that may not be able to afford market rate independent living. Next slide, please. In addition to that, who are we serving? Based on the State Housing Authority, they did a statewide needs assessment in 2022. And what I want to point out are the young retirees, individuals that are between 65 and 74 years old. Between 2012 and 2017, those individuals increased population by 25%. Yet, when you see median income 65 plus at $42,000, their income is actually less than the household income across the state of Michigan, but their population is dramatically increasing, more than any other age demographic across the state of Michigan. So what are we doing? We're proposing housing for a two-person household at $43,000, which exactly aligns with what the state of Michigan's median income for 65 plus. Those are rents between $727 to $873 a month for people to live in quality, affordable housing in the township. Next slide, please. So the jobs that we're creating, there's a lot of assumptions here, but I'm going to say the investment to Harrison Township, we're creating 209 short-term construction jobs, which amounts to $8.9 million of investment into the labor economy. I will confidently say not every single person that lives in Harrison Township will have a job on this site, but notwithstanding, the local economy will be bolstered as a result of the construction jobs. Next slide, please. Mike Palomir or Andy Wakeland, could you please explain the infrastructure improvements?
Andy Wakeland with Giffords Webster as well.
If you could tell us who you are and where you're from, and then speak clearly and loudly.
Yes, Andy Wakeland with Giffords Webster as well, the site civil engineer. In terms of the public benefit through the infrastructure improvements, as part of the design, we are proposing to connect the water main that runs along Campow. It actually comes into the back of our site. We would connect that over to Ballard Street. And what that does is it creates more redundancy within the water system, so that if you were to say get a water main break somewhere between there, they can shut off different valves and not take out as many homes while they're repairing that water system. So it creates a more reliable network for the overall water system. Number two would be we're possibly reducing the infiltration that would come from, there's an existing sanitary stub that goes into the sanitary sewer along Ballard Street that was put in when the sanitary sewer went in. As that ages, possible I&I can happen, and then you're paying to treat the stormwater. So that's a benefit by taking that out. By bringing more residents, more tap fees to the sewer network within Harrison Township, that will help to pay for future maintenance and future improvements within the system. So basically it spreads the cost of any improvements that the township wants to make a little bit further with more people. And then we will be pre-treating the stormwater runoff. So what that means is, say there's debris or sediment that comes from the parking lot or from the site. Right now, it would shed back into the wetland that's behind it, or it would shed into the ditches along Ballard Street. We'll be designing the system so that it takes it within our detention system, cleans it, and then takes it out to Ballard Street. Along with that, we would actually be reducing the amount of stormwater that would go into the Ballard Street road where it does now during very large storm events. So that would improve the stormwater system.
Thank you very much, Andy. And the last slide, please. Or the second to last slide. So in addition to that, the Tucker Senior Center is adjacent to the site. We believe that's a massive benefit to this project and the Tucker Senior Center. In talking with Tucker Senior Center, we're going to propose 4 different programmatic items that this development will provide. First is a connection/access. We're going to build sidewalk improvements from our development along to Tucker Senior Center with a crosswalk. We're going to provide, which will be part of, and I want to make this known, as part of the PUD agreement, we will include this in there so it is codified, that we will provide event programming, annual dollars and donations to support more event program at the Tucker Senior Center. In addition to that, we...
It might be gone. Excuse me. Please.
In addition to that, as far as transportation, we talked with several different agencies from the county senior division who provided a letter of support for this project that you should have in hand, to the senior center, to PACE, which is a national provider of senior services that has a location in Southeast Michigan to interfaith organizations about what are the major challenges that individuals and seniors face as they age. One of those is transportation. And so what we're proposing is that we will provide either on-site or provide to the senior center a bus to have more robust transportation services. In addition to that, we are going to provide financial literacy within our building that would be open to the public to allow individuals who are aging to understand how to spend their dollars so that they have enough dollars to live on for the rest of their lives. Next slide, please. So senior housing and health. There are a couple things I want to bring up here, and then I'm going to leave you with an anecdote, which is the opportunity to age in place, bullet point 1, improves health, happiness, increases life expectancy. It's also, by having people congregated in one building, allows for efficiency and equitable provision of healthcare services to a vulnerable population. What I'm saying in relieving stress, improving mental health, and increasing life expectancy, more than 40% of seniors regularly experience loneliness. So by being in a building where they have individuals that are of the same age, like-minded, reduces loneliness. In addition to that, loneliness and isolation is associated with a 50% increase in dementia, a 26% increase in likelihood of mortality, and a 32% increase in risk of stroke. That's first. Second is reducing health risks associated with poor quality housing. In a 16-year period, 85,000 cases were related to mesothelioma across the United States. 86% of those individuals were 65 and older. We're going to provide quality housing that does not have lead, asbestos, and hazardous materials. In addition to that, to provide health care that is most cost effective, it's anticipated that by 2025, 25% of care to seniors will be in houses rather than traditional facilities. This was seen during the pandemic and will continue. It is estimated this will cost, a 3x increase in delivery of cost from traditional facilities. So that means when a nurse comes out to a building with 74 individuals and households, those 74 individuals will get better care at a more cost-effective manner than they would in their individual house. And what I'm going to leave you with is this. For individuals, your grandma, your grandpa, your mom, your mom, your father, your uncle, your aunt. When individuals, there isn't housing and there's a demand and they have to go elsewhere, it's a disruptive thing in their lives. And what we're proposing is for individuals to age in place in this building in Harrison Township. That disruption will not happen because the fact that we have 74 additional units that are currently not here. And that is a true public benefit. And I leave that presentation with this, and I'm open to any discussion points you'd like to have.
Thank you, Mr. Toomey. Okay, so I want to get the engineer's points and the fire marshal's points before we open up the public hearing, and then of course any questions from the commissioners. So, our fire marshal, did you want to address your letter, please?
Thank you. I believe you guys have my letter. The points that I have, the fire access road that's shown on the plans is less than the 26 feet that is required by the 2015 International Fire Code as adopted by the Township Board. The fire access road that is labeled on the plans is less than the 26 feet as required by the code D103.1 as adopted by the Township Board 2015 International Fire Code. The second point is the access that is labeled secondary site, access left turn only on the west side of the property, does not have the width of access, and the fire department needs to have the proper access for that lane as there is a hydrant at the entrance and the code references D103.1. On the landscape plan, it appears that the fire department connection is potentially covered by landscaping. The fire department connection needs to remain unobstructed for use. That's codes number 912.4, 912.4.2. And I gave the code language in there. As I stated, I'm currently at this time not recommending approval until those are corrected.
Thank you very much. And I'll just ask, Mr. Toomey, do you have a copy of the fire marshal's information?
We do, thank you.
You do?
We do.
Okay, thank you.
Sabrina, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Newmer, may I ask you please to address your letter?
All right, we had a couple of comments relative to the water main. They're connecting to the existing water main kind of on the northeast corner of the site. They're showing abandoning that stub as it goes on to the hospital property, but there's a fire hydrant back there, and so we wanted to confirm whether or not that fire hydrant is necessary for protection on the other site. So that's something that needs to be taken care of. The proposed site plan shows the water main running underneath the pavement and the curb, but we're asking them to relocate it into the green belt for future access. We had the same comment that the fire department did about the driveway that's labeled left turn only. That should be a full access driveway, providing access to the site. There are several notes on the plan that indicate the Ballard Road is going to be paved along the frontage, but it wasn't clear on all the sheets. Some of them had it, some of them didn't. So we wanted the developer to be clear about their intentions of paving the road. And those are our comments on relative to the engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Newmer, I appreciate that. And Mr. Toomey, do you have a copy of Mr. Newmer's letter?
Yes, ma'am.
You do? Okay. Okay, I am now going to turn it over to Mr. Young. Did you want to address the items in your letter, or do you want us? I would
Yes.
prefer for you, because you're efficient.
Sure.
Thank you.
Apologies, I'm going to try to bring the site plan back up.
Okay.
And we'll keep
There's
it
a lot of
flat.
information here, so please, you're doing a good job, please.
Okay. So you have a copy of my review letter. I broke it up into two sections. First, kind of comments on the planned unit development portion and the requirements for planned unit developments, and then second was comments on the site plan. First, you'll notice in the review letter that one of the things that they're asking for is a waiver from the Planning Commission to allow this planned unit development to be considered at their current acreage, 5.18 acres versus the ordinance calls for 40 acres. And the Planning Commission has the ability to do that. The ordinance gives you things to consider in making that determination whether to grant that allowance or waiver. First, that the density of the PUD is consistent with what would be expected for development under the conventional standards of the zoning ordinance. Second, that the PUD is consistent with the Harrison Township Master Plan. And then third, the language is, it says that the property is located at the intersection of two roads or is situated in such a manner that transitional or higher intensity uses are located around most of the perimeter of the proposed development. So in the letter, I do provide some comments related to each of those 3 points. First, the density. The property is currently zoned RM1 district. The information that they've provided indicates that there could be as many as 38 dwelling units constructed under the allowance of the zoning ordinance. That would be about 7, depending on 1 to 2 bedroom units, just around 7 dwelling units per acre is what the underlying zoning district would allow. If it was rezoned, say, to the RM2 district, also a multiple family district, the next higher in intensity, the ordinance would allow a density of between 9.5 to 10.25 dwelling units per acre, depending on whether they're one unit or 2 unit, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom units. What they're proposing equates for a density of 14.29 dwelling units per acre on this site with the 74 units that they have. So that is not double, but nearly approaching double what the underlying RM1 district would allow, but it's also higher than what the RM2 district would allow. The applicant mentioned and included a copy of the master plan, specifically that 2015 sub-area plan of the master plan that does call for planned redevelopment for this site. In the narrative of that redevelopment plan, it does talk about that this area has the potential to be redeveloped for several uses, which may include residential, single family, multiple family, senior housing or care facilities, And even beyond that, a boutique hotel, office, restaurant, limited retail, or a combination thereof. So it does kind of open up a variety of options for redevelopment. Obviously, they're seeking the senior care route. But I would agree in terms of the use, it is something that's consistent with what was envisioned in that 2015 plan. The third criteria, again, that first of all, it's not at the intersection of two streets, but it does say that you could consider granting the waiver if you find that it is a transition area between higher density and lower density uses, in that there is the former hospital building to the east, and then the residential, single-family residential on the other side. You could see this property at least as a transition area. You'd have to give consideration as to whether you think the proposed development at 3 stories is a transition between the hospital and the single-family homes, although 3 stories is allowed in the RM1 district. Couple of other comments, probably a notable one, but would just need to be worked out, is maybe you noticed in the plan that they do have an open space calculation. The PUD requires that 25% of the land on the property is remained and dedicated for conservation or open space. It could be active or passive, but it would need to be dedicated into the future. That it would stay that way, so no development in that area. In this submittal, they did provide some indication of wetlands on the property. I did have a kind of a question maybe that you could ask the applicant when the opportunity comes up. Their environmental consultant noted that the wetlands wouldn't be regulated typically under our Natural Resources and Environment Protection Act, NEPA. It wouldn't be a regulated wetland under that requiring Eagle approval, but because of their fee structure, looking for, I think, federal funding or using federal funds on this project, their consultant calls it a regulated resource for permitting and mitigation by Eagle. So I would just like to know, I'm not familiar with that, I would like to know, would Eagle allow, in particular, the smaller of the 2 wetlands, which is proposed to be eliminated, would Eagle permit that? The larger of the wetland is proposed to remain in place. My only comment is to make sure that that wetland area in the required 25-foot buffer from it not be included within open space, or at least for the calculation of open space, because that wouldn't be a developable area of the property. In general, I guess what I'd say is they're even excluding the setback areas, the required setback areas. And I think, in my mind, the ordinance isn't very clear. I think the functionally significant open space in the development, which they're providing in the form of the garden and the dog park, and then some buffering in kind of the northern and western portions of the site, I would call those, and the courtyard as well. Those would be the open space areas. I'd like to see an updated open space calculation plan with the specific areas delineated for, here's where our open space conservation easement is going to, these are the spaces that it will cover. They were including some spaces like, even within like the parking lot, or, that's not functionally significant open space. I think they can get to the 25%, but I'd like to see it. They have, I think, some minor comments in there that can be worked out. Other, or as it relates to the site plan, I'd like to see more information on their existing conditions survey, specifically the demolition plan. In that northeastern portion of the site, there is, a small 1-story office building that extends into it with some parking areas that kind of serve it, connected through the former hospital site. And we just want to make clear that obviously they would propose to demolish that as part of this project. There's also an easement, a shared access easement. So those details would just need to be worked out to make sure that, it may even need permission from the adjacent property owner to do that. Other minor issues like the sign is within the corner clearance area. We'd like to see some details about the pavement surfaces, the light pole details, some additional information about what is going to be located within the courtyard. It looked like maybe there's going to be some hard surfacing in there, but it wasn't quite clear. So those are my site plan comments. Most of them are details that need to be worked out. I think the more significant comments are with regard to the wetland, also the density that I had mentioned earlier. If you have any questions for me at this time, I'd be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Young. Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Mr. Toomey, do you have a copy of Mr. Young's letter, and did you understand the questions that he proposed?
I understand the questions, and I do have the letter.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioners, any questions at this point, or do we want to open up the public hearing?
Could the applicant answer some of the questions that the planner has raised, or is it, or
We
do
could.
you want to do that during?
We certainly could, or we could do that during the public hearing. Do you want,
I don't know, but I would like to hear what he has to say about some of the
what Mr. Young brought up?
issues. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let's go ahead.
We have feedback, the public could comment on feedback as well.
Yes, okay. So are you proposing that we hear that
Yeah.
information now then? Okay, all right, I'm good with that. Okay, Mr. Toomey, let's go ahead and address the issues that were brought forward by our building officials, our planner, and our fire marshal, if you could. Shall we start with the fire marshal? How do you propose to address the access road being too small, not wide enough?
We can correct all the issues.
I'm sorry?
We can correct all the issues related to the fire marshal's comments. We have no issues with any of them.
Okay.
They'll be addressed.
And Mr. Shackett, is that enough to hear, or do you have any other questions more specific than that?
No, not at this time, I just need a revised site plan. to
Okay.
approve that.
All right. Okay, let's talk about Mr. Newmer's letter.
We can address all those as well. We don't have any issues with any of the engineering comments.
Okay. Mr. Newmer, is that acceptable, just as that's stated?
Yes.
And of course, new site plan. Okay, let's get down to our planner's letter. Oh, give me a second here to pull these aside. Okay. All right, let's go to, let's get them coming on both sides.
Chair
Oh.
Murray?
Yes, please.
There's also an additional 11 things listed on page 5 of Adam's letter to that sidewalk in particular is one that I would like to hear how they're addressing that.
Yep, just, that's my comment there. According to the plan that's been submitted, along the Ballard Street frontage, there is no proposed sidewalk. That was a comment, that's a requirement of the ordinance. You could waive it, but I wouldn't recommend that you do it. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to have a sidewalk, even if it might dead end at one end or even the other, for future connections, especially the presence of the senior center down the road as well.
And that was one of the public benefits that listed, so I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
seeing that on the plan is.
So, I agree. Thank you for pointing that out. Mr. Toomey, how do you want to, do we want to take these items one by one? Or,
I can do that.
okay?
The demolition plan, we can
Yes.
provide that for that information. The parking spaces are designed at 10 feet. We can indicate that on the drawings. There's some requested additional information on the courtyard. We can provide that, the paving details and layout. We can indicate on the landscape plan the trees to be removed. That's not an issue. There is a fence detail and there is a fence along the north property line proposed. There will be a full irrigation plan. Do you need that now, or can we just say we're irrigating and provide it later?
That'd be acceptable.
The light poles are 25 feet. We can indicate that on the drawings. That's the way they were designed on the photometric plan, however. We can provide those hard surface cross sections. That's not a problem. I think that was also a request of the engineering department. Corner clearance is not an issue. We can just shift that sign for that specific reason. We can add the sidewalk across the front so that we can tie in with the rest of the sidewalk that leads to the community center. And we can have a conversation about the open space so that our calculations and your evaluation match and get that corrected for you. So we didn't see anything on that list either that was a major issue. Everything, it was just requesting some additional information in general, and we're open to all those comments.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
The wetlands area specifically, I don't remember hearing that mentioned.
What was it? You want to take that one?
So it's still, to your question with respect to federally regulated as it relates to federal funds being in the project, it has been undetermined whether federal funds will be in the project to date, so it is not known whether or not they'll be federally regulated for Eagles purposes. That said, if federal funds were to be incorporated in this project, on the site specifically, as you noted, one of the wetlands, 0.05. So to the extent that it is federally regulated and we have to mitigate that, you work with Eagle to buy wetland credits to mitigate that 0.05. As far as the upper portion here, the civil can probably talk about the Alta survey that was done post the wetland survey, and that much of what was shown in that wetland survey is actually not our property line, and so that distinction will be made between the wetland survey and the Alta survey, which shows the actual property boundaries.
So you'll be clear on the site?
Well, it is clear on the site here, but to the extent that Jim and his team needs to incorporate that 25% open space calculation, that will coincide and it will parallel.
And can I just throw this question out there? The way the township calculates open space, that's not a negotiable item. That's a set ordinance, a set.
Yes, 25% is minimum required.
Thank you. And it's pretty clear, it is clear what can be included in that and what cannot be included in that, correct?
The ordinance calls it net developable area, so 25% of the net developable area, and it provides examples of what isn't included in the net developable area. Detention ponds are one, regulated wetlands are another.
Okay.
The ordinance later clarifies that it has requirements for the protection and preservation through like a conservation easement of some sort, a recorded document, a legal document that would preserve the 25% open space, and so that was kind of related to my comment on the open space plan where they show the calculations. Some of those are very small areas in between the building and the parking lot, for example. You can't really have an open space conservation easement on that. So, the northeastern corner of the property there, the amenity garden and the dog park, really a lot of the northern portion of the property, less the actual wetland acreage and the pond acreage, and as well as the courtyard area, that would be something they could incorporate into a recorded legal document. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Again, like to see an updated plan that ensures that the 25% is provided and can be recorded over time through some sort of an agreement to make sure it remains open space.
Thank you. Mr. Toomey, you understand that?
I understand that, and we would be willing to do that. We don't intend to do a phase 2 on this site, can't do a phase 2 on this site, so yes, we would record that conservation easement if required.
Okay, commissioners, anything that you want specifically addressed in the planner's letter? So you're aware of the 11 items on page 5?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, okay, right. Okay, commissioners, any questions, anything that you want to have addressed, or I'll put the question to you all, anything that you want to ask before we open the public hearing?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I could.
Sure.
Mr. Toomey, can you talk about the age requirements? So I believe the minimum age is 55. You have 22, I believe, two-bedroom units. So how does that work? Do both occupants, if there's two occupants, which I would consider probably a two-bedroom would have at least two occupants, does everyone in the occupying the unit, do they all have to be 55, or how does that work being in a senior living controlled environment?
Yeah, so we have somebody here from Cleveland Housing Network who's our co-developer that can explain that. Ellen, if you'd like to touch upon that, that would be great.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Ellen Cordova from CHN Housing Partners. And I'll certainly do my best to answer the questions about the residents and how they would fit. So to your question about multiple folks, so if we did have a household that was two individuals, unrelated, one of them met the 55 plus, as long as there were no children and both individuals met the income guidelines as set forth for the units, they could both live there even if the second individual was younger than 55, as long as the first individual.
Please, you'll have an opportunity during public hearing. Let's collect all information to start. Thank you.
There's an important distinction that I'd like to make here. We have to comply with fair housing laws. This is
Mr. Toomey, I'm going to ask you to repeat that again because that's a critical piece of information and I want to make sure everybody hears that.
we have to comply with fair housing laws. This is not something that the developer is saying that we want to have necessarily someone less than 55. It is a fair housing requirement stipulated by the federal government. In addition to that, when we show the two-bedroom rent, it is meant for a two-person household. So those two individuals would have to make less than that $42,000 plus or minus income threshold that's stipulated also by the federal government that we have to comply with. So that is not in the developer's purview, that is a requirement of the federal government.
And does that requirement dictate how many people per unit, one bedroom versus two bedroom?
It is understood that two people would be allowed to live in the two-bedroom unit. We can confirm that in more detail in a subsequent meeting, or we can address that at a
And then likewise,
separately.
does that dictate that a one bedroom would,
Before a
must
one-bedroom,
include a single person, a single resident?
person with that income that we stipulated in the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
It's not clear on the other person, so would there have to be a pre-existing relationship?
Do you have an answer to that, Ellen?
I would want to get you more information on that. It's my understanding they would be applying together as a household, so they would need to have some sort of reason to be applying together, but I can certainly get you more information on what that might look like.
So they have to already be established as a household to apply,
But what is,
if they're younger.
but what is defined as a household, we do not have the answer to, and we can provide you with that answer subsequent to this meeting.
So you're looking like a mother-son, a mother-daughter,
Well,
a mother-grandson?
I'm just wondering, I mean, they can't just solicit, hey, anybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
got a room.
There has to be some kind of pre-existing relationship, is that true? I mean,
I think that we will come back with an answer for you to that, but what we do know notwithstanding is that they have to meet that income threshold. Also to the extent, as we mentioned in the last meeting, there is a tax credit investor that purchases these tax credits where we have to be in compliance with federal law. And so we will comply with all federal law to maintain the tax credits in the deal.
So just out of curiosity, if you have even a single person in a one-bedroom, 650 square foot unit, and that senior finds a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and how do you control that? That girlfriend or boyfriend moves in. How does the management control that? Because now you have two people living there. One could be over 55, one may not. They may both be, but still, it's two people. So how is that controlled? Because if I don't tell somebody and somebody just moves in, even though they're making an income, it's not recorded, which means that they could be violating that income threshold illegally, right, I guess. So how, I guess I need to wrap my head around on how that, I just need to understand how that happens.
So first and foremost, the lease will stipulate who can and cannot live in that building as long as it's to federal guidelines. So we will have our own lease that manages that. Secondly, as far as income is concerned, we will have to do compliance audits on an annual basis, and people will have to provide proof of income associated with the project. If we do not meet that income compliance, we are out of compliance, and what that means in the tax credit world is a recapture event, which means that we would be in default with our tax credit investor. And there are two forms and ways in which compliance is met. It will be met on-site with property management. It will be met on-site, well, three ways, with Cleveland Housing Network's asset management team, as well as the tax credit asset management team. So there will be three layers to which we are able to monitor the income and the folks that are living in the building. But to the specifics associated with who lives in which and what the federal law is, we will comply with it, and we will structure our lease in accordance with it.
So again, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I guess I'm just a little skeptical, because if I'm living there and I'm over 55 and I bring in a female friend and she may start living with me, and I'm not going to tell anyone, she's there all the time. I mean, if somebody, somebody would have to approach me, or somebody would have to figure out, they see this person there many times, but who's going to ask the question? And even if they do, and they say, no, I live in, St. Clair Shores, so I guess, again, I know that's into the weeds, but I see that happening, and I guess it probably happens everywhere, but again, I just need to wrap my head around it.
All that I can say is that we'll have on-site property management. When we described having 6 jobs created, we'll have a full-time property manager on site, we'll have an assistant property manager on site, we'll have a roving leasing consultant, and we'll have 2 maintenance people on site. So between those people on site, I think that they would be able to manage and maintain the proper compliance and the proper conditions in the building to accommodate what you're just describing, or to not accommodate, but to defray what you're just describing.
So you're saying that the supporting structure is not like an apartment, but more like a senior living facility, because it has to be regulated by whatever the government declares as a senior living facility.
Yes. And what I described were 3 layers of compliance and structure to ensure that, as well as on-site property management to ensure that we will be in accordance with our lease and with federal and state law. And for that matter, the land use restriction agreement. And I don't want to get in the weeds of how this is structured, but there is an agreement with the State Housing Authority as to how we manage and how the income compliance and who lives in the building that is agreed upon and hardly negotiated. The state tells us what we are to comply with.
And not to get too deep in here again, but again, that's all on paper, but that may not be reality.
But
Right. Exactly.
But Mr. Tominello, if I may, it is, we are providing affordable housing to individuals.
I get it, and you know what, this is probably not the only place that happens, but I guess I'm just trying to,
It is in our best interest to manage a property to the utmost standards of Cleveland Housing Network being a property management and development company, and Common Sale Investment Group being operators and developers of senior housing across 8 different states. And that is our intention.
I've got a response to you that I think will put this to rest.
Please, can I ask you to please be quiet?
Our firm specializes in senior housing all over the country. I've done over 500 senior housing developments. What I find in these developments is that the residents who live there police this building. You bring an outsider into this building, as you mentioned, like that, and everybody in management's going to know about it because they're going to have an issue with it. They work as a family, they're integrated, and they take care of this building. That's the way these work. They look out for each other. And when there's a problem like that, it's not the management company, it's the tenants that live right around that person that come to the management company and take care of it.
So,
That's what we're doing.
so the interview, excuse me, please, you'll have an opportunity during public hearing. So the interview and application process is quite restrictive, and it on the initial. But obviously, Mr. Tominelli, you're addressing subsequent,
Right, that's what I'm saying, on
Yeah.
paper, you have to meet specific
yeah.
scoring and, you know, adherence and requirements.
Every single
But
year, you have-
in reality, really what happens.
but
And
every year
again,
you have to, and like, and any other apartment building, and I'll leave it at this, you renew leases. So every
But
single
this
year.
isn't every other apartment
No,
building, this
but-
is a
but-
specific
Yeah.
senior facility.
I understand that, and the analogy is whether it's a senior specific or an apartment building, there's a lease, and they're typically annual leases. So at the end of that lease, there's gonna be a renewal where they renew their lease. And so in that period of a year, to Jim's point, to the point about property management, and to the point about operating a quality building, that just won't happen. And so like, that's all that that's, the assurance is there. We have a team in place to ensure that we're compliant, we're providing quality housing on an ongoing basis. And the lease structure prevents the things that you are describing.
Are you gonna
And
insure it?
because you are, because there is state money involved or federal money involved, you're mandated to,
Yeah.
to follow those rules and regulations. And what happens if you don't?
So if we do not, a recapture event occurs. And what happens is the tax credit investor who buys the stream of tax credits will no longer be able to have the tax credits. And what will happen in that scenario is they could default on the operator and the developer and move us out of it. So it's not in our best interest to do so.
Please. So then it becomes a vacant building open for
No,
potential regular.
a new qualified operator, no. We will sign a land use restriction agreement for 45 years that keeps it affordable for 45 years.
So 45 years, affordable in the senior category
Yes.
specifically.
Specifically.
So it can never transition to a standard run-of-the-mill, everyday apartment
No,
complex.
it cannot. It cannot. Yeah, put that on record. It cannot. Please put it on record. It cannot.
And the income is recertified every year.
It's restricted, and every year HUD publishes a new rental rates that we have to comply with. We don't set rental rates. HUD sets those rental rates. So it doesn't, it's not in our.
Please.
And HUD is housing and urban development. So they take what is typically the 30%, most people spend 30% of their income on living expenses. And HUD will take the county and look at what is the average living cost and the average income and establish on an annual basis what those rents are. And we are held to comply with those rents for 45 years. They may go up, they may go down. It just depends on what HUD decides.
And management recertifies every tenant every year.
Yes. Has to. And often biannually.
Okay.
So they do it annually, come on, annually.
Did you want to
Not
ask Rosemary?
biannually.
You don't, or you don't? Rosemary, do you have is there any perspective from your point of view regarding that?
I can't,
Okay. Not until everything
test
is-
what he's saying.
Okay.
so I had one more item if I could.
Please.
I heard a concern from the resident to the west. I know you have proposed a vinyl fence. It's not along the entire property line. I guess my question would be, would you be willing to entertain possibly putting a brick or better wall separating the development?
We will consider that.
And then we have the option to make that a requested.
I mean, that can all be up.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, I had two. So we're looking at this property and we're discussing this as it relates to the hospital that currently sits there. But this is not the entire property the hospital currently sits on. This is just a portion of it. So the one thing when you're doing the traffic studies, I don't see how you're comparing this to the traffic of the hospital, because this is just a portion where the hospital, I mean, technically, the hospital didn't even really operate other than a small building on this property. So there was really no traffic associated with this property. The hospital resides on the property to the north and to the east. So I'm having a hard time with the traffic calculations because we don't know what will happen with the rest of the property, but your comparison is comparing it to basically the entire property.
Can you go back to that slide real quickly, and I'm more than happy to explain that.
And I do agree with your calculations on what is allowed with the RM1 and RM2.
Yeah.
But in comparison with the hospital, like I said, we keep referencing the hospital, and this isn't really the hospital property. That still sits vacant, adjacent to it.
That's a very, very fair comment. So let me clarify it, and maybe it will answer it, maybe it doesn't. So when you take column A of the 240 plus column C of the 885, that would be, based on the assumptions that we utilized, that would be the new traffic counts of 1,100. The comparison that we're making is that if you had the single-family homes on Ballard plus the hospital medical building, okay, that was generating in the time 1,500 traffic trips, okay, a day. Based on the assumptions, okay. We used assumptions by a third party. So what we're presenting to you is that based on that the amount of traffic when you compare the historical conditions to the current, which is just on the the homes, to the PUD, which is just on the 5.2 acres, is actually less than what the historical was based on the assumptions that we utilized from a verified third-party traffic impact studies. And so that's what we're saying. So it's not taking into account the whole site necessarily, it's just comparing the historical hospital use with the single-family homes to current conditions plus the PUD, if that makes sense.
It does.
You're right.
It kind of cloudies it by using the calculations, including.
Fair. That's a fair comment. Notwithstanding, what we can tell you by right today, though, the two-pronged argument in this one was, by right today, 320 trips would be added to that street if someone went and built 38 units, based on those assumptions. By providing a senior housing development, there will be less traffic, and I think that's the overall point.
Yeah, and again, I don't have a problem with those calculations.
Okay.
It was just
Yep.
one to separate the two.
Yep.
The other thing, so along with that, with the hospital sitting on that property, has there been any talks with the owner of that property? Because the building, there is a building that will have to be demolished, kind of in the area of the dog park and gardens, but that is physically connected to the hospital.
Yeah. So
And the hospital basically sits on the property line on your east side. So has there been any talks on how that will be handled with the property owner?
we do have to coordinate that. We have talked to the broker on several occasions about that property. We tried to actually buy that property. We are not able to buy that property due to the constraints that the seller wants and how we're going to finance the tax credits. And we need a long due diligence period to do that, to finance it. And so, notwithstanding, I do believe that we have the right to demolish that building, and we would shore up the component of that hospital in accordance and coordination with the current seller.
So, let me just clarify, did I hear you correctly? You believe you have the right to demolish that building?
We definitely have the right to
Oh,
demolish
okay,
that
I thought you
building.
said you believe you have the right.
Play it back.
We have the right to demolish that building because that building is on our property line.
Okay,
As
all
it
of it.
relates to shoring up the hospital portion, that will be in coordination with the adjacent property
Okay,
owner,
thank
whomever
you.
that shall be.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Mulder, anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay, any other questions from our planner, engineer, fire marshal, commissioners before we open up for the public hearing? Okay. We're going to go ahead and make a motion to open the public hearing. I just would like to share with you, we understand you're passionate about this, and we're going to ask you to please keep your words civil, kind. We're limiting you to 3 minutes each. In the past, I've gone over that, but we've got a lot of people here. So, yeah, and yep, you can use that one, and I'm using my phone. When 3 minutes is up, you're gonna hear the buzzer, and you're gonna have to stop and step away and let the next person come forward. If someone mentions traffic, nobody else has to mention that, because that's on the list. We're gonna be taking notes, the applicant is gonna be taking notes, all of us, so if someone talks about anything, if it's on the list, you don't need to mention it again. We've got it, and we'll be taking those notes, and then you will have the opportunity to have the applicant address your concerns at the end. So with that in mind, please keep your words civil, be kind. Oh, yes, that's right, yes, and there will be no back and forth. And so when you come forward, if you could give your name and address, please, clearly and speak loudly and clearly, we would appreciate that. So with that,
Madam Chair?
yes, yeah, with that, may I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
Support.
Okay, Ms. Devlin, supported by Mr. Tominello to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Okay, may I have roll call, please, Ms. Oparka?
Member Devlin.
Yes.
Member Tominelli.
Yes.
Member Mulder.
Yes.
Member Parker, yes. Chair Murray.
Yes. Okay, the public hearing is open. So, first person, please come forward.
Hi,
Name and to the podium, please. Because the microphone is gonna, the
My name
camera's
is,
gonna be on you,
Keith
and the
Wolanchek.
the
Address is-
microphone's gonna be directional to you, so.
Keith Wolanchek, address 36175 Edmund Street. My backyard actually faces right at the old hospital right now as it is. So that was part of my concern, was the height. I didn't want to see something towering, but it seems like it is not, being that it's only 3 stories, but that's a good thing. But my question is, the residents that can live there, the 55-year-olds, are they allowed to have children living there as well? Or grandchildren?
Okay, we've got the question.
So again, this isn't a back and forth. This
Yeah,
is,
we're gonna take.
I was hoping to get like a definitive answer. Because I still didn't hear that as when you were going, you were asking very relevant questions, and I didn't get a definitive answer as far as, are children allowed to live with the 55-plus-year-old resident? Yes or no? That'd be awesome to hear.
Okay. Anything? Next, please.
Don Whitney, 26580 Ballard. We live directly across the street from this proposal. I want to point out first about the traffic study, that the hospital has been inactive for a number of years, so the traffic with the hospital is 0. Before that, that hospital was a rehab facility, so there's very little of the type of traffic compared to a trauma center, which probably relates to the data that you're using. So I think that's an error. Secondly, this looks like a couple of years of a project. And if the next piece of property gets developed, that's going to be several more years. Our quality of life is going to be negatively affected for a long time. I don't like it.
Next, please.
My name is Donnie Strobeck. I'm on 26660 Ballard Street, and I have a petition to decline it. We have 236 signatures from all of Ballard Street. Every house on Ballard Street that we could get to, there was 3 houses that nobody was home. Every single person's on here, as well as a lot of other people from the surrounding area and in Harrison Township that do not want this in their town. So, can I give it to you? Or?
Yeah, actually, you can just set it right on the desk, please, next to, yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's not mine. That's Eric Toomey's.
Hello, my name is Jason Wright. I live at 276 160 Campo Lane. Several questions, actually. due to the engineering and everything else. Dirt roads, and then if you see ours, it connects up. It's just almost like a big loop. My biggest question right now is, first of all, the drainage system. Ours is connected to Ballard. Okay, I have a French drain that runs along my back. What's going to happen with all that? Also, near the frontage, it's capped off in some areas for the sewage department. We've actually called several times on that. I'd like to have that addressed too, because if we're going to have this influx of systems, then they need to address and update all the way out to the road. One of the other questions I had is, since it's a dirt road and then it's a paved road on my road, that loop around the traffic is going to be 147,000 pound gravel trains coming through. They're going to come around, destroy. If you look at our street and you look at their street, ours is paved, but it's choppy. It's already torn up. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to fix that?
Will be the county.
Okay, plus you guys talk about the traffic. If this takes 2-3 years, that's maybe 25, 30, 40 gravel trains coming in trying to level out everything. I mean, I would like to have that assessed too. All the sand and dirt that they got to bring in, what they got to take out, the heavy equipment that's going to be traveling down there. I don't care about 240 jobs. What I care about is my road not being a freaking pothole and being able to get out of my garage or my driveway and my sewer system's not backing up, or my backyard being flooded because all the drainage is coming down and it's got nowhere else to go. Thank you.
My name is Brian Pennebecker. I live at 25984 Maritime Circle, which is technically one street south of this proposed development. I'm here to speak in opposition to the proposal for a number of reasons, one of which is the section of Jefferson between Shook and Crocker and beyond Crocker all the way up to Metro Parkway is in horrible shape. And I really find it short-sighted and irresponsible of the township that they're allowing this proposal to be presented piecemeal like this and not part of a larger proposal that includes not only redeveloping the abandoned and vacant hospital that sat for years, but to get Jefferson, which is the main road that's going to allow access to this proposed site, to be resurfaced as part of a bigger, larger proposal. I think it's very short-sighted, and this, the township, the planning commission, and the board members on the trustees need to pump the brakes on this. Tell these folks to come back in a year or two as part of a larger proposal where they're going to resurface Jefferson, redevelop the site directly to the east where the old hospital sits, and then you'll consider it. But as piecemeal, this should not even be considered. It should be denied, hands down.
Hi, my name is Matthew Ryan Babcock, and I live at 26640 Ballard Street. I want to just touch on a couple things. One of them is that I visited and researched about 20 senior centers in our waterfront neighboring communities. Of those 20, 10 were subsidized. Of those 10, 0 were in residential neighborhoods. I think that's important to know. The site, Harrison Township asked for a creative use of the site. Common sales goal is to squeeze as many units in as possible to make it profitable. They want to develop 74 units in a 5-acre parcel. There's currently only about 40 homes on Ballard Street in total, and there's only about 75 in the entire neighborhood if you can, consider Edmond and Marillac and Homeview. So they're talking about virtually, doubling everything that we have in that area, and I cannot believe that they think there will be very little impact to the traffic. It just doesn't, makes absolutely no sense. So obviously I'm concerned about tripling or doubling at least the residents on Ballard for that, along with the new DNR launch, which is proposed to be larger. We've got a commission, considering. We've got a commission considering moving the township offices to the front of Ballard. So now we're going to maybe possibly have offices at Ballard, a new DNR launch, and then this giant, senior affordable living center. Just don't make sense for that area. Common Sales says that there's going to be little impact to the area, and I can't, that boggles my mind. This area used to be, wetlands. It's been illegally filled. We have deer, foxes, coyotes, groundhogs, birds that are all going to lose their home when we put this down. If you consider the 2010 Township Master Plan and the 2015 Waterfront Redevelopment Plan, very little of what they're saying meets that. They do touch on this senior piece in the RM1 part, but that's it. Other than that, our plan calls for protecting our environmental resources, including open spaces. It calls for careful consideration of new developments to be integrated with their adjacent lower intensity land uses, and it calls for a superior site design, among many other things that Common Sales does not. Lastly, it calls for you guys to make a decision with the master plan in focus so that you're not to put our township, and it uses this word specifically, at grave risk of that master plan falling apart. Let's not be mistaken here. Common Sale, located in Brighton, Michigan, not Harrison Township, it's got its own best interest at heart, not ours. This is not for us. This is for them. So, we need to make the right decision and deny their PUD.
Hi, my name's Kathy Marsh. I'm at 27546 Rena Court. I used to live on Ballard, and I love my neighbors on Ballard, by the way, the people that I see here today, and I really feel bad that this is going to happen to them. But really, this is not, the onus is not on that company. I think what they proposed is beautiful. It's just on the wrong street. I think it's really, the onus is on the zoning board from 2015, I think, is when you guys decided you wanted to do all these things to the area that we live in. So I don't think you'd want it in your own backyard, that's for sure. If it was your street, you would say absolutely not. This is a beautiful building, and it's great. It's a great idea to have a place for seniors to be. I like that, but there's other places in the township, and one of them, I think, is right there on 16, right before you enter Metro Beach. And I mentioned that to somebody back here, and they said, you guys all shot it down. I don't know why. That seems to make a little bit more sense than a residential. And you guys do have, you could change the zoning on that. You could make it residential. That could be a beautiful street. And another thing, I used to live across the street from Tucker Park, and y'all decided to put another driveway in. And all that did was shine more light in my windows. And there was nothing but diapers over there. It's dirty, it's filthy. And this township is looking a little shabby. And you know what? I am a real estate agent. And that is going to cause their values to go down a little bit. So maybe y'all need to give them all $50,000 a piece to maybe compensate them for what is really going to take place. Not one person here would want a building like that on their street. I know it. Again, it's a beautiful building. We have a HUD building, don't we? We have Metro Towers that used to be beautiful. It looks like crap. This township has got to get the zoning ordinances and start making our township look better. These building fronts look terrible too. There's so many bad things. And then also, my question is, do these people that would possibly move into this facility, do they have to be a U.S. citizen? Okay, so with that, I'm done. Thank you.
My name is Claire Fackler, 26380 Beamer. I'm 3 streets away from this. Number one, that's not enough land to put that many units in. Number two, one elevator is not acceptable. I know people who live at a HEPA. They are constantly breaking down. One guy was stuck in there for 2 hours waiting for someone to come rescue him. I feel sorry for them. As far as the traffic, I've lived here almost 75 years. Ballard used to be paved all the way to 16 Mile Road. It was called Five Corners. Ballard went across 16 Mile Road. 16 Mile Road met, and then what is now 94 was the Mount Clemens bypass, and it was Five Corners. We don't need more traffic. Right now, it's a cluster fuzz. I'm trying to be polite. Trying to get off of Ballard onto Jefferson. It's terrible, and it's going to be worse when the DNR site reopens. It is going to be a mess. My suggestion is to this board, take a hand count of how many people here are for this development and how many are against it.
My name's Gerald Kroll. I live at 26200 Campo Lane. I'm about 180 feet due north, I guess, northwest. And that part behind that site there you're talking about, if they do this, they're gonna displace a lot of duck families out of there because that stays wet almost until this time of the year. The first 3 or 4 months of the year, you can't even mow. From my lot all the way to the, going towards Jefferson, the backs are all flooded. And I didn't hear any proposal to get rid of some of the water. Secondly, I'd like to know, you know, I've lived this experience before, and it's a nightmare when they start developing this, because a lot of the vehicles are gonna come down Campo Street. We're too narrow to begin with, and the entrance to Campo, they dump all the salt down there because that's where the school bus has to stop. And I've been in touch with the county just recently, actually. They've got a collapsed drain right there at the end, and I asked them when they're gonna get that done. They don't know. These roads are all dependent on the county's cooperation. Has that been taken into consideration? Also, my house, I put an addition on the front right after I bought it. It was in my plan when I bought the property. And there's a ditch within 500 feet of my property. And they charged me an extra $300 at the county because I'm close to that ditch. That's only gonna be another 150 or so feet for these guys. I was wondering, the ditch ends, no one's kept it up, and, you know, do they have to get a county permit to do this for the drainage? I did. Secondly, I'd like to know if they have any Section 8 as part of their income for the residents. That's pretty important, actually. And I guess that's about it. Who's gonna maintain the roads on all of it? They're only gonna pave right up to their property, so there's gonna be a gravel portion in between, I guess?
They're gonna drive on ours.
Pardon me?
They're gonna drive on ours though.
So it's not even gonna be paved throughout, so we're gonna receive on Campo, we're gonna receive about half of the construction traffic. I can foresee that coming, and, because right now, many of the residents on Ballard use Campo to get there because they live on the gravel end and they don't wanna go, and I don't blame them, but it isn't gonna help things, I can assure you. And that end down the end, when them trucks start hitting that part down there, the first 300 feet off of Jefferson, it's gonna fall apart. It's already fallen apart, and nobody has a plan to address that. Like I said, I was in touch with them just recently. So I don't know what you can do with that, but I came here with an open mind, because I know you gotta put something there, but I don't think this is the place for it. Thank you.
My name is Janice Mills, 26400 Campo Lane. I live about 2.5 lots over from where this is going to be built. And I know it's going to destroy a lot of things. One of the things that I heard, they were going to take and tie into the water line off Campo Lane. We already have problems with our water pressure. We've had new homes built from Granny Meldrum's place down to Lee Meldrum's place. Those are all new houses there. And then we've had more new houses built on the end. Nothing's been done to our water system. And I went over to the water department the other day and asked them, why is our water pressure so low? And, well, it shouldn't be. Well, no, it shouldn't be, but when you keep adding homes to the system, something's got to give. And if you're going to take and you're going to add 76 more apartments, people using this water, lawns being sprinkled and everything else, that's going to affect us. I don't think we should be suffering for this, and I am against this being built. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Jesse Conwell. I live at 37385 Jefferson. I'm approximately about 1.5 miles from the Ballard Street. I do not see, and I will not see this unit being built or anything in front of it. But it still, to me, at this meeting, looks like lipstick on a pig, plain and simple. What I want to know from the township is, or the committee, is we really looked into, the planning's all you get all that, you get all, make sure they follow everything. What I wanna know is, have we really looked at what the revenue is? All right, you got 74 additional residents, well, maybe up to 100 possibly, right? We have a fire department that's always in a HEPA. Are we gonna get more money for fire department, policing, right? The 250 jobs, where are they coming from? Right? We have lots of companies here in Harrison Township. We can employ those employees, right? Are we making them bring anyone there? Even the lawn care, we have a couple lawn care companies. Are they gonna be doing the landscaping, anything, building, masonry? Where are we benefiting as a township?
Hi, my name is Pam Walsh. I live at 36162 Marillac and have been a resident of the township for almost 50 years. Okay. They're talking about 74 units. And half of that would be 37. So we're talking about 1 car or 2 cars. So that's 111 parking places. Plus they're talking about 5 maintenance people. That's another 5 cars. Where are they gonna put this? I saw when they built the boat ramp, what a problem that was traffic-wise. There's times on Jefferson that you have to wait for 3 lights just to turn on Crocker. And it's not just at rush hour. It's all day long. Plus we have all the boats, so they're constantly moving boats in and out and everything else. This is a bad idea. Thank you.
Hi, Steve Fires, 35680 Jefferson. I just want to make it known, I'm not for this proposal at all. What I've seen so far tonight is you got a company that's not a Harrison Township resident, not a Macomb Township resident, or Macomb County, not even part of Michigan. They're from outside of our state that comes in and wants to put up low-income housing in the area where these people work hard to make money to live where they live. And now you're going to give it away to people who didn't. Maybe they deserved it, maybe they didn't, but you're going to give it to these people who didn't work as hard in some perspectives as these people. And we don't even know what kind of clientele that's going to be coming in here. And have we even did a background check on this group to see what the last housing that they did develop, what kind of residents took place in those? I mean, is there crime, did crime increase by any chance? It's a bad idea. I don't even want to get to the roads or the civil engineering, because I just hope it doesn't even come to fruition at all.
My name is Paula Brewitt and I live at 38154 Willamere. I don't even live anywhere near this and I'm against it. Some of the things I want to point out very quickly is on this application it says attach a letter of intent which clearly describes the proposed purpose, use. I couldn't find that anywhere in the packet that I printed off. The other thing I want to bring up is these retention ponds. How big are they going to be? Are they going to be big enough? I have to go through my notes because you guys cover a lot of stuff, so. So, Common Sale Development Company works in conjunction with the CHN Housing in 7 states. That's a fact.
7 states?
Yes. You guys need to take the time and do the research.
I'm sorry, can you speak up please, because we can't hear you?
Common Sale Development works with the Community Housing Network in 7 different states, as you stated. Is that a fact? You guys need to do some research. Somebody brought up the property management and they're gonna manage these places. It's not true. I lived in subsidized housing at one time.
Can you please address your comments to the board? Thank you.
I lived in subsidized housing at one time.
Hold on, you can hear, you can hear.
I lived in subsidized housing. My mother lived in senior housing. All this property management stuff is BS. People were in and out of there anytime they wanted, boyfriends living in, people moving in, kids moving in. That's not true. I did some research about the property management and some units that were built in Detroit. All the people do is complain, can't get stuff fixed, nobody calls back, constantly changing the property management companies. So, I'm curious as to who owns that actual property. So, Ballard Management Company, right? A guy named Earl. So, I didn't get into the county records, but it looks like from 2012, the winter of 2012 to the summer of 2019, there were not taxes paid. Then all of a sudden, in 21, they started getting paid. I can't get in and see in the county if they caught up with that, but that's a lot of money. Kind of ironic, all of a sudden they start getting paid. What's gonna happen to those back taxes? Who's buying this property? You guys?
We'll get the question on the list.
Look up Brian Story, who's a CEO. STOY, Brian. This company is associated with, in some way, shape, or form, Story Point, Unified Property Group, Capital Development, Delcor Development, Midwest Management Company, RBS. There have been violations. They tried charging some seniors some COVID fees.
Your time is up.
A Nestle Attorney General on the COVID fees.
We'll talk to you after the meeting.
That's it, I got it. They can have it.
Do you want to take another person's?
Nope, I'm good.
She can take my spot, you can take my spot. Continue on.
Thank you.
It wasn't fair.
My name is Greg Buss, 37824 Maple Circle in Clinton Township. I represent Ballard Management. I've been sitting in the audience, I hear everybody loud and clear. I have done extensive research regarding this group, and it's a reputable group that specializes in senior housing with a 99% occupancy rate. I represent, if I could just.
Please, this is this gentleman's 3 minutes.
Well, I thought this was.
I've represented numerous apartment developers over the years, and what I think it's important to tell everybody here, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or antagonistic, is that this is zone RM1. So if this development does not move forward, and it may not, I understand that, there's a vote of the board of trustees, I understand that. But as a matter of right, this property can be developed with, let's say, 40 units. The number's 38, but for rounding purposes, if you look into apartment statistics, that's about, you're gonna get 3+ people per unit, which is 120 people for those 40 units, which likely will exceed the number of people here. Moreover, I have no problem with apartments, but you wanna talk about a lack of control. A conventional apartment building is managed by a management company. They deal with their tenants, and the problems are plentiful. I've represented a number of landlords that have had 5, 6 people living in units. It takes forever with the COVID thing, a year and a half to even get into court to do that. I'm not suggesting that litigation is involved in, that we push things about getting people out of units, not it at all. But please be mindful of the fact that if this doesn't go through, and again, it may not, the next person will likely be a normal conventional apartment builder. And they will go ahead and do what they want, manage their own property, probably have more residents, probably create as much or more traffic, and it will definitely have less interest, for the most part, in my 45 years of experience, less interest in managing this development properly. The last comment I have is, it just seems fundamentally at odds, in my view, with what we're doing here. We're talking about ultimately possibly coming back with an apartment building that will have the characteristics that I mentioned versus 1 to 2 bedroom senior living people. I've represented other senior living facilities. Many people don't have vehicles. They're 55 and older. They do drive.
Come on.
Many seniors.
Sit down.
A number of people that are 70, 75 years old Living independent living no longer.
Sorry, sir, your time is up. Thank you. I'm gonna remind you, please, let these people, everybody has an opportunity to speak. You all will have your opportunity. Please, be respectful.
He got his chance to threaten. That's good.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Board. I'm Brian Hartner, 24754 St. Paul. Just for a little bit of background, I wish to share a little bit of background about myself. I've been a building official, building inspector, and plan reviewer for 30 years. I'm very familiar with these type of developments. In fact, I was the same development in Fraser, almost identical. I've worked in Sterling Heights, currently in Shelby Township right now, so I'm very much familiar with not only the engineering, the fire division, but the building and the impact on the community. I've been doing this 30 years, and I was administration for the Zoning Board of Appeal, Planning Commission, DDA. I'm hip to it. I know you guys got a real tough job here. This is a tough crowd. However, there's a lot of information that should be out to the general public that these folks don't have a chance to do yet. By the way, prior to my 30 years of being a building official, my previous job before that, I worked for a lumber company in the contract division. This is all we did. We did all of these buildings for this gentleman's competition. Liberty, Rodney Lockwood, I'm hip to it. I know what it's like to build these buildings. I will suggest a couple of things to you. I'm not going to take sides, and I'm not going to tell you if I'm for or against this, but there's a couple of things that this board should keep very front and center. Certainly the impact of the community and the traffic and all that. You can work those numbers. I'm sorry.
No, you've got a whole nother minute. I apologize.
What you should really be looking at is, if not this, then what? You deny this, I don't want to be a soothsayer, but you deny this, and this goes with consent agreement to a circuit court, boy howdy, everything's off the table. You don't get a vote. This board right now has a rare opportunity to do some horse trading on what's the best fit for this community. If that ship sails, you don't get a second chance at that. I would strongly suggest you table this, work this out in the public forum. Invite these people and show them what's been offered to you, what they're up against, and then make your decision and let the chips fall where they may. I think the biggest, I want to put on my administration hat again for a minute, I think the biggest problem is not this building, it's the building next door.
There you are. I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you very much for your time.
I don't want it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Good evening. My name's James Sarconi. I represent Ballard Center LLC. That's the adjacent property owner at 26755 Ballard Street, the old hospital. First, I want to begin with, my client wasn't even aware of the PUD application until the developer that he was working with, that we were in discussions with, brought it to our attention and said that this was going to negatively impact the development that we were proposing and they were working on, and they backed out of that project. So once we got that pack and we've looked through the information, we were able to obviously see the same things that that has been before you, and I'm not going to bring up again the various deficiencies and deviations that they're looking for. But what I want to make clear is it is our position that this will absolutely negatively impact that street and the overall redevelopment of that area. These properties, unfortunately, are owned by two different people or two different companies.
Yeah.
Originally, it was one cohesive property
with the administrative building, or whatever that building was, it predates, unfortunately, my involvement, connected. There's easements across the parcels here, but it was used collectively by this hospital. If this gets developed in the way that they're being proposed, in this small section, this 5 acres about, piecemealed off from the rest of that area, we're setting up a precedent for, I guess, my client to move forward with 224 units. When you take about, we're approximately 3 times the size. It's technically 13 acres, but approximately 3 times the size. The ideal thing to do here is to table this, and I would recommend that the property owners, my client and the adjoining owner, have some discussions about some sort of joint plan that addresses the community overall and brings both properties back into productive use and benefit to the community. So with that rambling, I say that my client is opposed to the PUD application.
My name is Earl Joseph. I own the property. We have the question on time. This gentleman was just here, represents Carroll Knight, which owns the hospital. You people, back in 2015, I believe it was, rezoned it, or granted the PUD, so he could have 54 units in that hospital, senior care units. As of today, his client has done nothing for this township. Been totally negative. Here, we have a development that's coming in, that's willing to spend millions of dollars to develop this adult affordable care unit that we need in the township. These people here, I think what one gentleman said, is a miscommunication between the people and what is really going to happen. And what's really going to happen is if you don't allow this unit to go, the law says I can sell it to somebody else, and they can build 35 units of, I hate to classify it, a little bit lower class people. These senior people, they have no kids going to school.
35,000.
And everything else. Hey, I got 3 minutes. They don't have no kids going to school. You need to provide senior living at affordable rates in this township. That's your obligation to do that as a city and a township. The county is behind this, and there's a huge need for it. So if this don't work, there'll be another project behind it, but you won't be. So I would suggest modifying this and working with the developer to do something. Just as the gentleman stated, work some of the bumps out of it. Otherwise, there's going to be problems because it will be sold. And as far as Carroll Knight saying that the development should be done, where is he? He's a multi-millionaire. He owned 80 gas stations at one time, 2 terminals. He's now a poor man. He got in a bad car accident 7, 8 years ago because he ran into a guy. So where is his development that you people approved 7 or 8 years ago? I've been around. I own that property for 35 years. I'm not a new kid on the block. So I think it needs a little bit more modifying with the township engineers, a developer, and let's get something moving. There's a huge development here to say, you people.
Time's up.
What about developing with the residents? What about the residents? Screw the residents.
Please keep your comments yourself until you are afforded your 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
My name is Shannon Riley O'Neill, 26129 Ballard. And my question is, I believe this is the same man who illegally dumped on that site years ago on the weekends and brought in tons and tons and tons and tons, 3 feet of dirt. and filled that in, and it was no longer wetlands. And he wants to be rewarded this. I want to know if he ever had to do any mitigation for that. I have called and tried to find out that information, but have not been able to. If he hasn't done that, this shouldn't even be any kind of consideration. Also, it's 40 acres that it's supposed to be on. I don't get why we can't just say, sorry, you're supposed to have 40 acres, and you want to put it on 5 acres, so no. I don't know why it all has to go through 3 chains of command before it can actually happen. I don't understand that whole policy. The other thing is, last time we were here, we were like, it's way too big. So they went from 80 to 74. That's nothing. It's still huge. So I don't think they're considering any of us. They don't care at all what we think. That we want the deers and we want the trees and we want it to continue the way it was. And Mr. Tominello, I read that you said that change is always scary, but sometimes it's hard to stop. I'm hoping that doesn't mean that's your position, that you want it to continue. I hope that you're saying, but I'm willing to stop it. Because, you know, I've read things in the residents group and I comment, and my comment does not appear, so I don't even get that. The last time it said there were 15 people here at the board meeting that I read on the residents group. There weren't 15 people here. So false information goes out. The people on Ballard are against it. I can guarantee you that. I didn't go to all those streets. I went to Pontchartrain just on a whim to do one street. Every single person signed a petition that said they didn't want it. My sister lives on Terramar. She did her street and no one wants it. We have a diverse community already. That's why I moved here. I'm happy with it the way it is. The people on my street are happy with the way it is. You guys work for us. We don't want it. So I don't know.
Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much.
William Hogan, 25895 Campo Lane. I have about 4 questions here. Mr. Toomey didn't really address how many parking spots and how he actually came up with the parking spots. One of them was the tie-in of the water mains from Campo Lane to Ballard. Why do they have to be tied in? On Campo Lane, we have enough problems now. And where would the sewage come from? How would they attach the sewage so it wouldn't bother Campo Lane? Light poles, is the light poles going to, affect the house north of the complex? And township benefits, are they going to, when they put this in there, working with the property next to it, because I don't believe the chart that was up there, because you have to add the development next to it. Not knowing what that is, you can't just say it was the hospital. It could be 3 times that much traffic. So are they going to make Ballard wider from their complex to Jefferson? And how are we going to address it with Jefferson? Jefferson is a busy street. It's over-traveled. I mean, I live on Campo Lane. Try to get out of Campo Lane. Ballard's got a light. Campo Lane is just almost impossible.
Robert Waters. I live at 26172 Campo Lane. I've been in Harrison Township since 1967. I'm still here for a reason. Just like the little picture back there, the place is beautiful. It has a lot of wildlife. It has a lot of things going for it. There were other things I was concerned about. For example, with the traffic study, and you're using 1,500 cars or people traveling, and then subtracting a number out, and your number was 1142. Realistically, if that gets redeveloped, you're not minus 392, you're plus 1142. So can that road really handle that 3,000 cars they're gonna leave there? Short of that, the other very concerning thing is, and whether it's not my expertise, so I'd have to claim ignorance, but some people stated that we could be under threat of it. This doesn't get developed, here's what happens. It can be taken. State or whomever can force something. If that's true, we need to know that. And I think you're the people that should be telling us this. And you should be doing what's in our best interest because you do work for us, and I respect y'all. You know, I think you're probably all really good people, and whoever else is going to vote on this. But the people need to know we're the people, and we are in control. So it's your own destiny. Do what's best for us. But if you have that knowledge and that expertise, please share it. Do we have to rezone it? What do we have to do to rezone it? How can we keep this from destroying Harrison Township if these gentlemen don't do this? And they're business people. I have nothing against these gentlemen. That they have a prospect they're going after. But what's in the best interest of us? Please look out for us.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Sikowski, 38538 Elmite Street. I also work in the township. I saw the proposal and I saw that it said 55 plus senior living. But as I was here at this meeting today, there was some discussion about fair housing laws and things like that. And so my concern, and also it said that there'd be no impact to our schools here in the L'Anse Creuse community. But my question about fair housing laws is if a 60-year-old person has guardianship of their grandson or their granddaughter, and is it possible then that that granddaughter or grandchild would be able to live with them in this senior living community, and therefore it would then have an impact on our schools? So I was a little confused with, is it 55 and plus, or is it more of a fair housing law? Where do those two tie in? Is it a mix of both? Is it one, or is it the other?
I'm Mario Moraldo, 25999 Ballard. I've lived on that street for 42 years. I've lived there when the hospital was running 3 shifts, whatever they were doing. It never seemed to be a problem back then. The appearance of the hospital, the way it is right now, doesn't bother me. I doubt it if it bothers anybody else on Ballard Street. We've grown used to that being like that. We've grown used to living the way we are living there. Now, I think I've made this comment before. Since the people that will be living there are over the age of 55, and I can attest to being over 55 myself, that I do have some medical issues. The fire department has been to my house a couple of times for my wife or my sister-in-law. Anyway, has there been any discussion, or has been, since the fire department is here, do they anticipate any additional load being placed on them for these maybe 100 residents that are going to be in that building? You're going to need another ambulance and 3 more additional fire people to cover the 3 shifts or however they work. And who's going to finance that? And the other thing, I haven't heard anything, not a word, about how much property tax are these people going to pay relative to having 4 or 5 houses on that same property. I mean, are we going to be paying a ton of taxes so that it'll support the necessary infrastructure stuff that's got to be done for these people? Or is that going to just be dumped on the rest of us? Thank you for your comment.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nancy Guimond at 35724 Jefferson. And I don't understand why we would rezone residential property to accommodate a development like this. We have larger properties that have not been developed at Jefferson and Shook, which is 10 acres. And to put this in a residential area makes no sense whatsoever, and to further rezone in order to accommodate makes no sense whatsoever. When we have residents that are paying taxes now and have been residents for a very long time and have asked for consideration for rezoning, and they have been denied with no problem whatsoever, flat denied because somebody didn't like the sightline. So a lot of people here don't like this sightline either, and I think it should be denied.
Good evening, Ms. Murray. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Randy LaForest. And yes, I am a woman, not a man, as reported in the paper. You'd think they'd know it after 40 years or 50. But
If you can state your address, please.
39201 Pine Ridge. I grew up on Shook Road. The Shook and Jefferson property was turned down for a nursing, assisted living, senior deal. That was turned down. The soccer fields were also turned down. Similar project, not necessarily senior citizen, but it was turned down. Also on Old Jefferson, the old Tuma next to them, they wanted to build condos. But they were turned down because they were going to be blocking the sunlight on people's houses. So much more stuff has gone on. But you could solve it all. Just rezone Campo Lane and Ballard back to full residential. You rezone other parcels and break it up into multifamily or marina or non-marina or however you do it. So why? Why disturb a great neighborhood? And has anybody questioned these developers? If they've been bankrupt, have been affiliated with other companies, opened up other companies, been sued, things like that. I'm not saying they have, I just would like to know. Also, this, it just doesn't make sense. You're destroying a neighborhood.
Yes.
You're destroying two streets. And did anybody do a wildlife study? Is there any protected wildlife in there?
Here to kill them. Could be protected trees.
There is a lot of work to shove that kind of a project onto that small of a parcel of property. And my family lived here when Shook was a two-lane road before 94 was here. Seen a lot of development, and a lot good, a lot bad. But you have the power to give these people back their neighborhood. Thank
you. 3 minutes, Mr. Sensak.
Jim Sensak, 31698 San Juan. I'll speak fast.
Okay.
Plan unit development in the ordinance is very specific on some of the things that are required, and you guys have the ability to turn it down. And that's what I'm suggesting tonight. The specific objectives for the plan unit development is that it requires innovation. There's no innovation here. It looks like a commercial apartment building. There's no innovation. in land use and variety in design, layout, and type of structures. Oh, you guys mentioned the fact they were 8 feet over the height requirement. So what do? Put a flat roof on it. You know, there's other innovative ways to get that height down. Other apartment complexes, other senior citizen things have put the lower floor in at tri-level depth. I live in a tri-level depth. I guarantee you, tri-level house, I guarantee you it's quite feasible. And that would have got you your 8 foot. And then it wouldn't look like a big jail sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. It says, the other thing that says preserve significant natural resources. Well, first off, it's only a 5-acre site on top of it, but they're not preserving anything with it. It's going to be all building and cement.
And a dog park.
And a dog park, I'm sorry. And then it says, require the preservation of useful open space. Useful. There is no useful open space here. A dog park?
Dog park.
They haven't told you even what the size of that dog park is over there. It's about 25 by 30 feet. Whatever it is, it's not going to be useful. And it's not useful to the residents of this area. The last thing is, I believe it's a real perversion of our ordinance when we say that we need 40 acres to consider this planned unit development, and they come in with 5.1. You know what? They could have put the whole site, including the hospital, in this and said, because the hospital is only 13 acres. The last thing I'd like to say, I hope I get it in time, is that the ordinance clearly requires that you meet the 8 land use requirements of the special land use. And one of those is, number 1 exactly, is that the proposed use shall be of such location, size, and character, it doesn't mean any of those, that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood. My time's up?
Your time is up.
You can have my
That was
time.
43 minutes.
You can have my time. You were gonna give the other guy the time, but you can
Okay.
have my time.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You start again.
Okay. Thank you. So that is, it's not in harmony with this neighborhood. You got 240 people that have signed a petition that says it's not in harmony with their neighborhood. I guarantee you there'll be a lot more than 240 people that end up signing that before we're done. I think, you know, I don't live in this neighborhood, but I have some friends that live in this neighborhood. And you know what? You guys are perverting the ordinance if you allow these guys to come in from out of state and make all kinds of cases. They haven't even said one thing that's really useful to the citizen. Well, we'll consider putting the wall up. Your ordinance requires that between that residential property and that RM1 property, it's a major impact. You are required to have them put up a wall, not a chain link or fence or whatever, a wall. Read the ordinance. Secondly, additionally, it says the proposed use shall be of such nature that it will make vehicle and pedestrian traffic no more hazardous than is normal for the district involved. Guess what? Guess what? I've heard many of these people talking about the fact that there's going to be more traffic. They're comparing it to a hospital that's been non-existent for, somebody said it's 7 or 8 years. It seems to me like it was 20 years already. I've lived out here since it's 64, and I can remember that hospital over there back then. So, I mean, and then let's go on to the proposed use will serve as a public convenience at the proposed location. It's really critical that they put that in the middle of a residential neighborhood, 88 or 74 unit apartments. It's really critical. Somebody suggested a couple other places. You know why they don't want to go to those places? Because they're too expensive. That's why. They could find something on a corner with two streets on both sides like your ordinance requires. They could find that. You guys have the capability to shut this down, and I've given you at least 3 or 4 reasons why, under the requirements of this ordinance, that you could say, no, we're not going to allow this. I think in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare will be protected, that you guys should turn it down, and turn it down tonight, as I suggested a month ago to these guys. Don't come back again because you're wasting your money. If you come back again, there's going to be a lot more people than this out in the audience when it comes in front of the township board. And I guarantee you the township board is going to understand that people are going to speak in this township. Thank you.
C. William Bardell, 25-year resident, address 37865 Point Rosa. When you were asked, Madam Chair, you asked the applicant to answer questions from the planner, and I noticed that the applicant did not address the density at that time. Danced around everything else. It was a nice little dance around that. Again, this is in a residential area, and I understand you got to do due diligence as a planning commission, but you're giving the applicant everything, even the kitchen sink. You hand it to them on a platter. Okay? I understand you due diligence you have to do, but for one of these PUDs, there's not the room here. Also, if I could comment real quick on the other job number that was supposed to be done, the old hospital next door, was supposed to be a rustic type situation. Why wasn't there a follow through on that rustic historic site, blah, 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 blah. Okay? That's a drop ball. Okay? So the ball was dropped on that. So, I mean, I understand this guy, whoever owns this land, wants to take the money and run and go sail his boat in Florida. All right, hey, can't blame the guy. But we're still here, we're still alive. That's a residential neighborhood. And if you want a PUD, you got to have the land for the PUD. You're giving everything to the applicant, and it's not fitting the PUD. Okay? That's the problem. And they always come to you and go, well, we got to be creative. No, the applicant has to be creative, not us. They got to be creative. In other words, you got to find a piece of land in the right area that's not a residential neighborhood. You can go out to Lapeer. You can go to Detroit, 7 in Gratiot, 6 in Gratiot. They tore a bunch of stuff out of there. You can go to Lapeer, behind a Meijer somewhere. Not in a residential neighborhood. It doesn't fit in a residential neighborhood. It does not fit in a residential neighborhood. Put single-family houses in there. It's a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Kevin Whitney, 26580 Ballard Street. There were quite a few different opinions here today, and there are quite a few different issues going on, and the hospital property is also consideration too. So I think we need to make sure you do is take your time and figure out what we're going to do here. Don't be in a hurry to make a decision. This will be a long time thing for us guys, and please don't be in a hurry to decide something. Thank you.
No. Remember, greed is good.
Dan O'Neill, 26129 Ballard. Long time resident, 25 years. Long time taxpayer. You guys work for us. Hope you guys remember that. I don't know if any of you guys have actually come down Ballard or walked down Ballard, but we all walk down Ballard. We walk our dogs. It's a beautiful street. We walk down Campo Lane, it's beautiful. We love it. And just, I mean, to me, it's really obvious that the footprint, 5 acres, you're going to squeeze this building into 5 acres where you supposedly you need 40 acres. I mean, right there. And with the threat of, you know, if we don't go through with this, the threat of, you know, it could be a different apartment building. You know, I don't give in to threats. I mean, I hope we all will. So that's it. I just want to be on record that saying that my parents both lived in a HEPA on Crocker. The developer is pulling at our heartstrings. You know, it's. I agree. We need housing. You know, that's obvious. You know, we have to take care of our seniors. I'm probably close to being a senior. So I just want to be on record saying I'm against this.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Teresa Green, 24950 Murray Street. The conversation was about the interior, how the places are managed. I've spent a lot of time in the New Baltimore high-rise, and I can say that the women and men there are very respectful people. They take care of themselves and they take care of each other. The management company that was in there, she was responsible for every year collecting, because I had clients I took care of that lived there, and they had to take care of collecting Social Security documents, any investments they had, and every year they were internally audited to see how much they were making in order to stay in those housing facilities. That being said, if this doesn't get passed, it's already a residential housing, and it does get sold because it's still multi-residential. My fear is that we're going to end up with another high-rise like Metro Towers. I personally don't even like going to Kroger's anymore. I go to the one on 13 Mile Road because and I have friends who, because I work with persons with disability, who've had to put people in those high-rise at Metro Towers, and she would walk out crying because she felt so bad leaving her clients there. So I just want to make sure that whatever decision you make, remember, we don't need another Metro Towers.
Anyone else?
My name is April Babcock. I live at 26640. You already heard from my husband tonight, and he is very clear-spoken on these things. All I know is out my kitchen window will be a blank wall of windows that are not very attractive, not to what I see now. That disturbed me in a large amount of ways because I was here a week ago and listened to what you guys approved, even though 2 of you did not, about a situation in Harrison Township that does not relate to this, but know that it was 4 against 2. Then you passed it for not necessarily going completely through, but to get to the next stage. I will be here at every meeting to listen to each one of you, to know whether one of us that are sitting in this situation right now need to be on that board to help you make, not now this decision, but to need to have further information please take this in consideration. You don't live on those streets. You are not seeing what is going on, that will be going on if you approve it. It is something that tons of people are saying no against. You just need to listen. That is a big ass section to go in a small ass space. It is inappropriate for you to pass this.
How's this benefiting you?
Anyone else? This is your public hearing.
Hello, I'm Sarah Mattarella. I live at 39789 South Point. I lived on Ballard for 20 years. This is not a Ballard problem. This is not a Campo Lane problem. This is a Harrison Township problem. I'm 30-year generation in Harrison Township. I've been here for 34 years. I'm 34 years old. I'm raising fourth generations. I'm hoping to make it 5. We need as a township to stick together, and this is a small township. I love our township. It's run down in every other direction. We should be focusing on the places where we could be making our township better, not adding more. Kroger can't even feed all of us. We don't need more people living here. We need to straighten our township up with the people that already live here.
Anyone else? This is your opportunity. Your 3 minutes. Okay. All right, that's 32 residents spoke. Mr. Toomey and group, I hope you were paying attention and taking notes. We have 32 comments, 32 items to address. So I guess the question is, do you want to close the public hearing? Do you want to keep the public hearing open? Last call for public hearing? Hold on. Okay. Number 33.
Hi, my address is 27037 Ballard. Just remembering it because I just moved there.
Your name, sir?
Mark Eichner. I actually bought it from the, right over there. And it's actually my dream home. And if this gets built there, it won't be my dream home anymore. Because my 3 kids live there and my wife, and it'll just be too chaotic. And like she said, there's not even enough food at Kroger for all the people that live in Harrison Township. And you can't even go there because there's people fighting in the parking lots because of the kind of people that live in that high rise.
Yeah.
So just imagine what goes on in there could just be even worse. So nervous being up here, so not really a big speaker. But again, I don't want it to be built there. If anything, you should build some residential homes. You could probably put 4 or 6 homes there and have plenty of room. And all the neighbors would more or less love that compared to anything else. So I don't think it should be built. And I don't think anybody realizes what will happen if you do build it. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Okay, board. Any, oh, got another?
My name is Thomas Arnold, 26135 Ballard. I'm a new resident of Harrison Township. I have only been here for 3 years. I moved to this area because it's quiet, it's peaceful. It's nice, it's pretty, love it. And for the most part, I just want to go on record to state that as a resident of Harrison Township, hopefully for the next, I don't know, the rest of my life, we'll say. Sounds good? That, no, I don't want to see it when I drive home. But I will give them a tip of advice. because I kinda am a nice guy in times. The design sucks, dude.
Anyone else? Okay, board, what would you like to do? Make a motion to close the public hearing? Have the applicant address the issues within the public hearing? If you've spoken, generally it's a one and done.
Do we get to hear the vote?
So I don't have any interest in closing the public hearing right now. I think there's a lot of issues to address. We don't know where this is going from here. So I'd like to keep the public hearing open, but I would like to hear the applicant's response to the residents' comments at this point.
Okay. Are we all in agreement to that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right, so are you making that in the form of a motion to keep the public hearing, or we're just gonna keep it open? Okay, we're just gonna leave it open. All
Well, I guess we would have to keep that once we're done.
right. Once we're done, we'll make an announcement, or if we, right, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have 34 separate comments. Did you want to address those piecemeal? Do you want us to read them off? How do you want to handle?
I'll come up there.
Okay.
For just a second.
And so please let me just remind the gallery, you all had your opportunity, so please be respectful and let's hear the answers. We don't need any negative comments, no back and forth at this point. If you have additional questions, we'll add those to the list afterward. Okay, Mr. Toomey?
Procedurally, can you please discuss the public comment period as it relates to after we make comment, what happens thereafter? Procedurally, they're keeping the public comment period, the public hearing period open with us coming to address the public comments. And my question is procedurally, can you tell me, like, when does the public hearing close? Because typically in other processes, the public hearing would close and then the applicant would come to address those comments. So can you explain that process?
We've done it both ways.
Okay.
We have done it both ways. Generally, when an item is before us that's large and expansive as this, with a lot of detail, we have left the public hearing open because we know that, just out of experience, a lot more information is going to need to be exchanged. If we keep the public hearing open, and if you return to us again, depending on where we're going with this evening, then that affords the opportunity for additional conversation to occur. So I don't know if we've set a precedence doing that.
So my intent
Generally, we do.
My intent with that comment was, again, to keep the public hearing open in case there's any further dates. But as of today, I want to allow the applicant to respond, but not a back and forth with continued public comment.
Correct.
For tonight, it was done and it's open to the applicant. Is that?
I understand what you're trying to say. First off, I know that Madam Chair said, oh, we have 32 residents and 32 separate comments. I don't believe you have 32
We
separate
don't have 32
comments.
separate
I think
comments.
that by you listening to the residents, you have a good handle on the things that you might ask the applicant to address, to answer some of the concerns of the residents. So that's one. How you want to do that is up to you. If you want the applicant to just come and review what he recalls he wants to convey to you, the board, to address those concerns, that's one thing, or you could go through your own list. As far as leaving the public hearing open, that has been up to your discretion. It's not uncommon though, everybody has spoken. The idea is that you get the comments from the public. You can close the public hearing and still address issues because it has been your precedent to use the first meeting as a gathering of information, a back and forth with the applicant, the board, representing the comments from the public. So you usually adjourn it and make a decision at the next hearing.
Correct.
But you don't have to do that like you have done in the past. It's either we're satisfied, we're comfortable to make a decision based on lots of criterias of a PUD, or you're going to table it. But you can close the public hearing and have the applicant address it, or you could just leave it open. But to have them come back up and continue a conversation, that is something that you wanted to avoid. You gave everybody opportunity to speak, and I think you have all of their objections in the record.
Okay, so in anything additional from the public relating to anything that the applicant might say now?
If it is a new topic, then if you want to address it that way, but you're going to be discussing everything that they brought up. It's just but it's up to you.
Got it, got it. Okay. So, Mr. Mulder, hearing that, do you still want to keep the public hearing open?
Yes, like I said, my intent was to keep it open in case there's a future date that this applicant comes with any new information, but no more public comment for tonight. So it's not a motion, that was just my intent in saying that. When you're asking for the opinion for the board, I'm very
Hearing is open, then comment is available.
Yeah, if the public hearing is open, you almost have to take comment.
But you can choose to take comment if it's closed, like if there's a specific question. You don't have to
Just because
include it.
it's open, they can, like, this can't go round and round all night.
No.
That's what I'm
agreed.
asking.
Correct. And you could, I would suggest to make it clean, you close the public hearing. It doesn't mean you're gonna have either, you're gonna let
We
the
can still
applicant
table it,
discuss.
right?
Right.
We can still table it
Yes.
till the next meeting.
Correct, yeah.
We're just closing public comment.
Yeah, you're moving forward. You've listened to the applicants, you've had the public hearing. And then you're bringing it back to the board. You let the applicant answer those questions for you to decide. And then if you can make a decision, you make a decision tonight, or you feel you can't and you want to table it, you table it. That's the procedure.
So we are still in our info gathering stage, that doesn't change. Board, I'll ask a third. Do you want to keep the public hearing open, or do you want to close it this evening and continue with the discussion from the applicant?
I'm comfortable with closing the public hearing.
Is that
I want to get some feedback from the.
is that in the form of a motion, so we can add discussion?
No.
Okay. Okay, okay, board, what do you want to do? In the past, we have left the public hearing open until the next phase, although I now looking at that, we weren't enveloping anything. We really weren't enveloping anything, which I think is our intent, to make sure that that is, all the information is contained within the opening and closing of that public hearing for the public. Although they sit here and they hear everything else that goes on and everything else that we talk about and share and back and forth anyway. So,
Yes, at the moment.
right,
You
I
do
guess
not have to
for me,
close the
we've
public
always
hearing.
kept
I
it
know,
open,
we've always-
so
I
I'm
know.
sitting here
Is
struggling
that
with,
like through
we've
the chair?
we've set that
So, let's
precedent
keep it
that we
open.
keep it
Wanna keep it
open.
I don't, yeah, I'm not sure why we're getting
I'm
into
okay keeping it
procedural.
open.
Like, I would like to hear the responses from the applicant and then decide where we
We can
want to go
always-
from
we
there.
can
All right.
Can
close
we
it.
describe how we generally have left these open, maybe for the,
any potential additional, and we're
Yes.
still in the meeting, so we
yes,
haven't
for the
come,
applicants?
So,
right, we
I
haven't come
guess,
to the end of this case yet for tonight, so.
so if we leave the public hearing open,
Alright.
and let's say after our 32 issues or the issues we're gonna address,
Mm-hmm.
if the applicant has said, you know, we'd be willing to change this, this, and then if we leave it open, he'd come back with another rendition. If the public hearing is open, the public can speak again to the changes, correct?
Yes, if that's the procedure that you are doing. However, and I'm just saying procedurally wise, if he's making those changes at the next hearing, and you've already heard what the residents had to say, it's ultimately up to you to say, is that sufficient or not? You-
I would want to see the records.
You are the board that
I
makes
know,
decisions.
I understand.
We just kept it open last week.
Madam Chair, can we go ahead and move forward?
Yes.
All right, so we are gonna keep the public hearing open this evening, and we're going to listen to what Mr. Toomey has to say.
I have another question before I address. And so through the chair, can I please talk to your township attorney? Thank you. So, we address right now, we comment on whatever we decide to comment on, whether it's architectural and technical, or whether it's qualitative with respect to the project. At which point, you can ask more, the body can ask more questions, but the public has the ability to come back up and respond to my and Jim's comments. Is that fair right now today?
No, I don't think so. I think what we've done in the past is we've kept the public hearing open. We've heard what the applicant has to say. We've added our questions and comments. Then we've determined where we're gonna go with it at that point. If the public hearing remains open, if there happens to be another meeting.
So the mechanism is basically allowing for us, if we so choose to do so, to come back to another meeting. That
Yes.
within the plan specifically, we are able to address any associated comments from the commissioners.
Yes.
Is that fair?
They are fair, and they're trying to leave it, they want to leave, they've done it where they're leaving the public hearing open in the event that they want, you've made changes to the plans, and then they would still want to hear public input.
For in a subsequent meeting in the event
Correct.
that the applicant as in myself would love, or comments that would, and Cleveland Housing would want to come back.
Right.
That is, okay, fair.
Okay?
Then with that, how would you like me to address the comments? So I don't, there was a lot in
There
that,
was a
and
lot,
then there was a lot
and there was a
that,
lot of repeats, so,
and there was much stuff that was unrelated to the project, and so I don't exactly know.
why don't you
Address the
begin just
petition
by
then.
addressing the items that are related to the project, because that's why we're here.
Okay, so then what we'll do, first and foremost, Jim, if you're okay with it, will you address the technicalities of any architectural components or zoning before we go?
I will.
Thank you.
As I was taking some notes, as I heard the comments, I'll try to address some things, at least the architectural engineering items that I recall. I did hear the height of the building. It is, again, it meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. There was a lot of comments about traffic, but I believe the second person talked about traffic. I think that we showed in the traffic study that was prepared that if the property was used as it is currently zoned, the traffic count would be higher than the traffic count that we're proposing. So we still stand by that documentation that the proposed development will create less traffic than if it was developed as it is currently zoned. There was questions about the sewer. The sewer has to be designed to meet all the township engineering requirements, and it will be designed that way for the sanitary sewer. There was some questions about the stormwater. Same thing, on the stormwater and the detention system, it has to meet all the township requirements as well as Macomb County requirements. So it will be designed in that fashion, so it will be sized and designed to meet all those requirements. With regard to the question about water pressure, by connecting the two mains together, you in fact allow for pressure to be better in the community as opposed to reducing it, because it can be connected at both ends, and if there's, as mentioned, if there's damage at one location, then you don't shut down anybody's pressure in the city. There was a question about parking. The parking meets all the township requirements for parking. In fact, we provided a couple extra with regard to parking at the recommendation of the last meeting with the Planning Commission. Parking count, light poles. The light poles are designed to meet all the city requirements. They meet the 25-foot maximum height. And then we did provide photometrics for all the on-site so that none of the light leaves the property. All the fixtures are required to have cutoffs, and we provided all those photometrics as part of the package. The density came up and it was addressed. We are proposing this density as part of the PUD. We did reduce it as suggested by the Planning Commission in the last meeting, and that's part of the PUD process to allow for additional zone density on the site. Those were the engineering architectural comments I recall. I don't know if you have anything else that might be related to those.
You bet.
So I heard one comment about needing more than one elevator.
There are 2 elevators in the building, not
Okay.
one.
And that is, the location of elevators, is that based on serving a certain amount of residents?
There is no code requirement for elevators.
Okay.
Pardon me?
I'm waiting for you to continue.
There's no code requirement for elevators. We are providing 2 in this building.
So for senior housing, there's no requirement that senior housing be provided elevators? By the
No.
state?
Actually, there's not any code requirement. We are providing 2 elevators.
Thank you.
Yes.
Too narrow of a street to accommodate.
As I mentioned in based on the parking counts that we're proposing, the street is more than adequate. I mean, you can ask your engineering department to handle the additional trip generations from this type of project. And again, based on the calculations that were provided, if this site was developed with the 38 units that could be built here in standard multifamily housing, the trip generations would be much higher.
Paving Ballard following construction? Resurfacing?
We are paving in front of Ballard, in front of the proposed project. There will be requirements during construction, typically your engineering and building department takes a look at all the roads prior to construction. If there's damage to the roads, the contractor will be required to repair that damage.
So along that line, would the roads be paved before or after the project? If the sections that you're talking about paving, before the construction of the project?
It would typically, you wouldn't pave that till after. It's the same thing with parking lots and everything else. They get paved. The typical process would be put down a base course in the road as well as parking lots and curbs. And then once everything is completed, you put the top course on and repair any damage that was done to the base course. Would be typical procedure.
And based on the comments from the public, approximately how long would, if approved, this project take for the construction until it's up and functional?
A construction project of this nature would take between 12 and 14 months.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify from some of the comments.
Yes.
Anything else that you had noted?
I think that from those perspectives, regard to that, I mean, there's a lot of comments, but they were
Specific to the actual site?
in design, et cetera.
Retention pond?
The retention pond has to meet all the design requirements of the township engineering as well as the county engineering department. They have to be sized. The water has to be treated before it's discharged into the system.
Thank you.
Was there a discussion on the water pressure issue? I heard it. Did I miss that when I said that?
Yep,
Yeah,
that is Okay,
Yep.
sorry, that's okay, right, Mr. Cow. He indicated that it will be better when it's completed.
Because of the redundancy?
That's correct. It allows for additional pressure between the two streets, and then it also allows for, if, as mentioned by the engineer, if there's a break anywhere, it allows that less people lose water because they can close a very small portion of it.
No, I think you can ask a question while.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
yeah, please feel free.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
That I thought of while the comments were going on. You talked about crossings and over to the senior center. Have you had any conversations with the road commission, or road department, the county road department, about those crossings and whether or not they'll permit those?
Not yet. We have not had discussions today.
Because that comes up,
But of course,
developments.
assuming this was approved, we would, of course, we would do that.
I think if that's what we're considering as a public benefit, we would want to hear that those conversations have been had before approving a site plan. I would personally, because I know how the road department works, and if they're gonna allow a crossing, that would be amazing, but
So,
I would want to see it.
so a sidewalk on one side, both sides, one side all the way down to the
Well,
senior center?
Their proposed public benefit was a sidewalk leading from their facility in a safe crossing to the senior center. I think that was on the slide, correct?
It was on the slide. Yep.
So, I think that's a huge public benefit. Because we don't have very many safe crossings in the township. And if we got one, maybe we could get some more safe crossings.
So, can I address that very quickly? So, two things. First, if we were to decide to come back at a subsequent meeting, assuming that was available to us, we would have those conversations. In addition to that, we would have in the PUD agreement, to the extent that that was required, that we would have all those approvals within the agreement itself. Okay?
Does that satisfy your question?
Yes, it does. All right, commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Toomey, can you, I need to be educated a little bit more on the pilot program and how that's going to affect this,
Yep.
this development and how that affects the tax base.
Assuming that we move forward, as, that is not the purview of the planning commission, that is the purview of the township board. We are slated for a meeting with the township board, assuming that we choose to move forward to have that discussion in August. And so I'll address that at that point.
Can you tell us what the pilot is? I just.
A pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay. So what does that mean? Can you
It's
just
a way in
elaborate?
which this could, so, there's been comments about us. First, I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna answer a lot of the questions and a lot of the comments associated with the development team through this. And so please give me just a minute to do that. So Cleveland Housing Network and Common Sale Investment Group have not done one single deal together other than this one deal today. We hope to establish a long-term relationship together. Common Sale Investment Group is located in Michigan, okay? Common Sale Investment Group, CEO is Brian Stoy. Brian Stoy has been in the development business for a very long time and has a very reputable company in Independence Village as one brand, Story Point as another brand, and Luxury Living as another brand throughout the Midwest, concentrated in Michigan. Cleveland Housing Network as well is a well-respected nonprofit provider of senior housing. And I'm gonna address that, that's all I'm gonna say there. Second, As far as affordable housing goes, and the question with respect to profit, we are subsidizing rents. The way in which a developer in affordable housing makes money is capped as a developer fee to pay for our time and to give us the opportunity to build the housing, okay? That is the only real way we make it. And that amount of money is stated in the Michigan State Housing Development Agreement Qualified Allocation Plan. It is stipulated how much we make. As far as the cash flow generated, as folks are saying that we're gonna be very, very profitable, and I'm gonna get to the pilot in a second because it ties into this. We are capping rents, okay? We're not driving rents to $3,000 a month. We're capping rents at $800 a month, $886 on average. When you take your rents, less your expenses, less the debt, you make almost nothing on an annual basis. And if there is a nominal amount of money that is to be made, it's swept by the investor. So from the development side, you make money through fees, and the fees are capped by the state. Okay, so when there's this conversation about us being developers and this connotation of us being evil, we are not here trying to land grab, trying to make the maximum amount of money. So now to answer your question, the pilot is utilized to be able to reduce operating expenses by limiting the amount of taxes that are generated to maintain affordability. Affordability is created through, broadly speaking, two mechanisms. That pilot, which we'll talk about on August 8th, is a tax abatement towards the project. And that is a tax abatement, and that pilot is a resolution that's used throughout the entire state of Michigan. It's used in Macomb, it's used for a HEPA, it's used everywhere. It is a pilot ordinance through enabling legislation through the state of Michigan. And it's an ordinance and a resolution that will tie to the affordability period of the project. Second on that is, I guess that is it. You know, I don't have anything else to say other than that. It is a limitation on the taxes toward the project to maintain affordability at rents on average of $886 a month. And so I just want to address that comment that we're here not to take advantage of you. We are here to provide what we think is a public need in affordable housing for seniors.
In a different location is great.
Okay, now I would like to offer I'd like to offer a question as it related to one of the comments that the individual asked with respect to RM1 and the zoning designation. Not as a threat, but as you were supposed to provide the public with an opportunity to understand what would happen if you denied this and another person came to you with a 38-unit project. It's zoned, and before I ask, I'm gonna infer, it's zoned by right today. That if they came to you, you're not approving a rezoning. You're not approving any zone. It is already zoned. You're gonna approve a site plan. So if you deny this project, and Mr. Stilson decides to sell this to somebody else, that person, if they decide to build multifamily, can do that, notwithstanding an approval from you other than a site plan approval. And I'm asking, is that clear? Is that statement true? And that's really what I'm asking. Is that true today, that if you deny us, Earl sells it to somebody else, and they propose 38 units, by right, they can build 38 units?
I would refer that to Rosemary. I don't
Yeah.
want to comment.
No, I don't want to comment.
I'm deferring to the planner because I don't have the density requirements, but if it meets the RM1 standards, it is just a site plan.
That's correct. It'd be by right. It would not require a public hearing. They'd have to meet the ordinance requirements. The density was a straight calculation based on the total, or the total acreage. There are factors that come into play, such as possibly the wetlands, but in principle, 36 to 38 units is what they could expect if somebody were to come later and propose a development. It could be multiple family housing.
And I would say the demographic of a multiple family unit for a for-profit developer will have a different mission than what someone that's going to build 74 units of senior housing. And the demographic will be much different than somebody that's willing to build senior housing versus conventional market rate housing. That could be someone that's 20 to someone that's 75. And I'd like to address another comment. I apologize that we don't have all the information associated with fair housing law. But if we were to come back, we will have every single answer ready for you to answer every one of your questions. And so with that, I think I've addressed the majority of the comments on a broad brushstroke, but if you have anything else you'd like to ask me, I'm happy to answer.
how many cars, how many parking places?
Yep, so
We know that parking is an issue.
Yeah, so based on our portfolio of 74 properties, based on Cleveland Housing's portfolio of, I think it's what, 3,000, is it 3,000 units? Yeah. That, on average, a resident of a senior housing facility has about 0.65 cars per, 0.65 to 0.75 cars per unit. So, that's a ratio. And so, we are providing 80 spaces, or we're providing 74 spaces per unit plus 6 for parking, so we're providing 81 spaces. So we are providing above what our typical portfolio has as a means of trying to accommodate visitors or whomever else. How many handicapped? Well, we don't have to do 10 handicap spaces.
So that 0.6, 0.7 per unit includes the handicap?
Well, no, so we have 82 spaces in total, and we have, but in the portfolio wide, on average, our residents in a building, in a 100-unit building, a 165-unit building, have 0.65 cars per unit. So let's say out of 160 units, multiply that by 0.65, 0.7, that's how many spaces or cars are in a development. I would say cars, but we provide more typically.
Just a note, too, the zoning ordinance is based on 1 space for every 3 units, plus 1 for each employee, which the requirement in Harrison Township for this project would only be 30 cars. However, we're providing 82.
Have you met with the hospital property owner? That was one of the questions.
I have accidentally called that property owner when we were trying to purchase that property, not thinking it was his phone number, and I had talked to him. He would probably not remember that I had talked to him, but I have talked to his broker on several occasions. No detail associated with this development, though.
No detail, you say?
No.
With the broker or with the?
With the broker, we had conversations about a purchase or a sale of that land very early on.
So the 25% open space, usable space, you mentioned that that was gonna be noted on the next, if you return, that was gonna be noted on the next, on an updated site plan?
We had it included in the previous site plan, and he had a conversation with the planner. He had some concerns about some specific areas, so, but there was plenty of additional space on the site that was in question, so I've got no concern about
Not being taken up by parking, not being taken
that.
up
We
by.
didn't include any of that, but, about the size, but there's plenty of additional to meet the requirement.
Okay, commissioners? What do you have on your notes?
The only thing additional I had was based off a comment, and I don't know if this is information you have or can provide. For communities like this, is there any additional load that they put on emergency services within the township?
I'd ask that question of the fire chief.
It's my opinion, with any increase in housing, an increase of people living there, our run volume will increase, yes. I can't tell you by how much, that's pure speculation, I'm not going to do, but I can confidently say it will increase.
And I'm also speaking directly to the type of development, as a senior community versus where it is now as an RM1, in your opinion.
In my opinion, having senior living would increase because seniors statistically utilize emergency services more. Again, that's speculation because I don't have the statistics.
I'll make a speculative comment to add on to that, is we do not know how many of the residents will be existing Harrison Township residents today. So to the extent that that's 50% of the residents in Harrison Township live in this building, then it's actually going to be it will be a net effect on that 50%.
Well, where they were living for us, and they're selling their house to move there.
Excuse me.
Not
I have a comment or a thing for us to ponder as
Thank you.
planning commissioners, and just, I'm not saying anything with this comment other than we had someone come up here and describe that they have 3 seniors living in a home and have called the fire department multiple times due to issues at their home. Is a senior living facility designed for seniors? Does that lessen the likelihood that there's less accidents because they have bars in the shower and they have ramps and facilities designed for that population? And that was just, will they?
Yes, it does, because we do provide for additional safety precautions. We do provide for showers in lieu of tubs, which is the #1 location of falls in senior living. We do provide the grab bars, 0 step entries, no steps in the building. Absolutely.
I want to address one other thing too that has not been mentioned, but 2 individuals mentioned traffic mitigation plans associated with construction without saying it. And so I would like to say that within the PUD, we would be open to discussing with whatever body needs to, a traffic plan during construction that mitigates traffic during that 12 to 14 month period. So however we do that, we would be more than open to having those discussions of how we work through the most optimal scenario.
That would be another conversation with the road department that I would want to see happen prior to.
And the comments about the length of traffic lights, that's also handled by the road department.
Yeah. And you can go online and complain to the road department about your traffic lights. They have an online form.
The township has no authority.
Okay, commissioners, anything else?
Sure. So, a few things, and this is just, I guess, not my decision, but just some feelings I have towards the project. So, it is going to be a greater need on our public servants, fire and police. Although property taxes are going to be in abatement, and that's your right. So we're going to use more services, getting less taxes. And those taxes are spread across all tax entities. This is no secret, I told you before when you called, I still have a problem with the building height. I think 3 stories in that area is not consistent with the surrounding residential areas. It's not consistent with the existing hospital as well. Your picture that you showed, to me, even though you lowered the roof, it was still higher. So that's just some thoughts I have. Open space, I guess I need to see what's going on there. And the other thing is the density, and that's another thing I voiced my opinion to in previous conversations. 80 was too high. I think I mentioned to you last time I talked to you, 74 is too high. I have a number in my head, and but to me it's still too high. I think there's too many deviations. You know, again, I believe with the 74, the 40 acres actually comes down to around 37 from arable, right, as far as space required. But it's still too much, again. So, and again, I don't think the development is in harmony with the surrounding residential homes. So just some thoughts, just to throw out there that, as you go forward.
With regard to the height though, we're not requesting a deviation. It meets the requirement of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, so maybe I just don't like the design then.
Well, just want to make sure that I've addressed. Public benefit, again, you mentioned the housing demand, meeting the potential demand for quality, affordable senior housing, the sidewalk and the safe crossing to Pepper Park.
Job creation.
I think the township thinks, not the township thinks, but I think we've come to expect a public benefit is an ongoing event. It's not a short-term event. It's not just a, we're gonna supply, jobs for 70 people for 12 to 14 months and then call it done. That might be a public benefit for, 70 people for 12 to 14 months, but it's not a public benefit to the township. Although for those 12 to 14 months, businesses will surely see an increase in, buyership and so on. But a public benefit is something that benefits, like a park, like a gazebo, like a bike stop, like a sidewalk,
A
like
safe road crossing.
a safe road crossing.
let's
Something
let
that
her finish.
benefits anybody and everybody in the township, and it's ongoing. It's ongoing.
So, and the partnership that we propose with the Dunker Senior Center is one of those. And if there are other things that you'd like to see in this development or adjacent to the development, I would love to hear what those things are.
Well,
and then,
that's for you to bring to us.
Well, that's a negotiation, the PUD agreement, and that's typically how that works. Is if you say to us that we would like to see a park, well, how can we help you effectuate that? And so if we're trying, we've done community outreach, we've talked to the residents, we've talked to the Tucker Senior Center, we've talked to several different area agencies, and we've come up with what we think we've heard. But if there's other things that you would like to see, we would be more than happy to try to accommodate.
They did say they were providing some funding, correct? To
We did, so
seniors-
an annual
to the
contribution.
senior center, annual contribution to the senior center, which is a benefit to 30% of our population or whatever the number was over 55.
It's not on your street. It's not on your street. Yeah, maybe that slide would be helpful.
I guess for me, I'm struggling because I looked at our population numbers, and from 2010 to 2020, there was a 40%.
How about you speak up? We can't hear it.
Excuse me?
From 2010 to 2020, there was a 41% increase in the 60 and over population in our township. And our population stayed the same, pretty much. There was maybe 20, 30 people that moved in or left the township. So people are aging here in place. And one of the things I love about this township is that people love being here and people stay here a long time. But where do people go when they age? Where do they go? Do they go to a single family home that's 2,000 square feet?
Yeah.
So I'm struggling because we continue to have these senior housing things, developments come in front of us, and we don't want it here, we don't want it there. Calawart, when that one came up, people said, put it at the old Ballard Hospital. People that are in this room have said that. And now here we have one. Do I think this development is a for sure thing or great or anything? No, but I think as a planning commission, we need to think about where this aging population is gonna go.
Excuse me, please.
Just because I took to take notes, it's part of my job.
Thank you.
I just wanted to reiterate, what I heard.
Excuse me, please. please.
I just wanted to reiterate from my notes what I heard the public benefits were, which would be the housing demand, the job creation, the infrastructure improvements, the recreational amenities, the congregate care with the Tucker Senior Center, elimination of blight and vacancy, and event programming at the senior center in conjunction with their senior care with matching funds, which would be included in the PUD agreement, so it would be memorialized, along with a bus for the senior center and a financial literacy to the aging population. Those are my notes.
Good notes. Thank you.
In case you needed
Put it on your street.
Next to your house. That's what benefits the company.
Anyone else? Commissioners?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Oparka in that I personally know seniors that have to leave the township to find a place to live. Seniors that are close to me, and I would like for them to have a safe place to live in the township. However, I do think that the density for this particular parcel remains a question in my mind. I would also like an opportunity to have some discussion on the actual architecture. I appreciate the changes that have been made. I still think that the architecture maybe is a tad clinical. It could be more single-family residential in nature, the architecture, just to try and blend in a little bit more. I feel like that street has a traffic light. The traffic study was based on numbers that are commonly used and widely accepted in the industry. It's based on trip generation. The trips are based on the types of uses. So again, I feel the benefit is that seniors that I know and love will be able to stay in the community as they are unable to live in their own homes. And that could be me. I could move into this, my age.
Excuse me. This is conversation between the board and the applicant.
But again, to the density and the architectural feel, I feel like that is something that could be improved upon before I would be willing to look at approving, recommending approval.
Thank you for that clarification. I feel also, as I suspect all of us, the density is too high. It's a small piece of property. 3 stories is too tall, in my opinion. I also like the idea of seniors having a place to go in the township. I'm just not sure if this is the location. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it at this location. I think there's too many deficiencies. Too many units.
People don't want it.
That's how I feel. Any other questions, commissioners? Any other comments from the applicant?
What do you think is the optimal density that you'd like to see?
I'm sorry?
What is the optimal density that you'd like to see? How many units?
I don't know if I could answer that right off the top of my head, but 80 is too many, 74 is too many. What's the requirement for the way that it's zoned? 36, 37?
At current zoning, as we talked about, between 36 and 38 units, depending on the number of bedrooms. Even if it was rezoned to the RM2, that would allow between 9.5 to 10 and 1/4 dwelling units per acre, and this is at 14 right now. The zoning ordinance with regard to the question of waiving the 40 acres to allow something lower, suggests that the proposed density of the PUD should be generally consistent with what would be expected from a development under conventional. So, as we talked about, so 36 to 38 is current zoning. Could a rezoning to the RM2 be approved? Even if it was, that would allow, I don't know what the numbers, how many more units that would be, maybe another 10, another 15. I'm not sure what that would be, the max 10 dwelling units per acre, up to 50 maybe, if it were rezoned. I don't think there's a magic number, but we have a guideline from what the ordinance would say.
And it's, as I was looking at it, I had the same issues with density and the height of the building. I understand by flattening the roof, it's gotten under the height requirement, but I'm still looking at a 3-story building, and it doesn't look as nice without the
roof. It doesn't look
without
any
the pitched
better.
roof. And simple math, we're roughly around 75 as a 3-story, and as a 2-story with the same dimensions, you drop down to about 50, and that's kind of a number where I feel more comfortable.
Understood. I can tell you from a financing perspective to address this, and from an operations perspective, with interest rates rising and construction costs being as where they are today, that to be able, and operationally, to be able to build and be able to score competitively to provide that affordable housing and allow people to age in place, it is likely that you will not be able to score a site and then be able to finance a development at such densities. So I hear you, and we will do if we choose to come back, we will do our best to figure out a way in which to accommodate that and still find a deal that's financeable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other comments from the commissioners? Any other questions?
I agree with what you just said about losing the roof really took away from the aesthetics of it and made it look very institutional, so I agree.
And we would agree with you too, but we have to try to accommodate.
And since this is the first time a PUD I've been on the planning commission for 5 years now, 6 years, and we now have 2 PUDs that we're discussing. So I looked at our zoning map, and it would appear that only one of the PUDs on our zoning map was over 40 acres. There's one that's the dockside marina thing that was 2.4 acres. There's some condos next to Geno's Surf. Those were also PUD, that was 7 acres. And then the condos inside MacRae are also a PUD that was not, but I didn't measure that one, but it was not 40 acres.
Yeah,
So
that's 30,
I just,
30
from
years
some
ago.
of you that have been on the board longer than me, and do we have any 40-acre parcels in Harrison Township left undeveloped, other than the woods that are protected, so. I guess, should we be approving these continuously? If our ordinance says we need 40 acres.
Okay, board, what do you want to do?
We have the option to,
Yep, we have the option to table. We have the option to recommend approval to the township board. We have the option to deny approval to the,
it would still go to the township.
yeah, would still go to the township board, yeah. So those are our 3 options.
Well, I don't think I have enough information to recommend approval.
No, I agree. So,
And Madam
table
Chair,
or
you
deny?
also have, two
I'm sorry?
members missing.
Yes.
Yes,
We have 2 members missing.
Oh, yeah, we are down 2 members, correct, so we do not have a full board.
I mean, you have a quorum, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying if the petitioner wants a full board to,
Yeah.
make a decision, or if you're gonna table it, then.
Yeah, you have that option to request consideration since we're down 2 members. We do have a quorum, but all 7 of us are not
They
here.
could on their own make a motion to table it, or if you are interested in requesting a tabling because you don't have a full board for them to move forward on a recommendation to the township board either way, you can ask, can I wait till the next meeting?
Am I able to ask for a motion to, if I would choose to do so, to waive the 40-acre minimum requirement?
You have to do, like, that has to be decided in order for the PUD to go forward anyways. And if you want them to make that decision today with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members, you could do that. Or you could wait, if they table it, they would make that decision at the next meeting. And then keep moving forward with the project. It has to be waived initially.
Can the township board, if they were to deny this, make a recommendation for denial, can the township board still waive that requirement even with their denial?
That would be their recommendation to the board. So yeah, it's ultimately the township board's decision, but it would be the planning commission's recommendation to the board that we recommend denial because we don't want to waive the 40-acre minimum.
Just to clarify that, the township board has the jurisdiction to be able to, if they were to make a recommendation to deny, the township board still has the opportunity.
final authority,
The final
yes.
authority, both on the PUD and the waiver requirement, correct? I will defer to whatever it is that you guys want to do.
Back to the commissioners. What do you want to do this evening?
So precedent is that, especially with projects like this, we never move very fast. And this is generally our fact finding. There's been a lot of public comment. There's frankly been a lot of accusations and comments that pertain to this site, but not to this project also. At this point, I would be willing to make a motion to keep the public hearing open and table this. The applicant has heard the comments from both the planning commission and the public, and let him make the decision on how they want to move forward, but like I said, we don't generally move fast. We would normally table this, and that's the direction I'm looking at right now. So I'm willing to make that motion tonight.
Okay. So we have a motion to table this item to allow the opportunity to gather more information, to allow the applicant to take what they've heard tonight and to return, if they so choose, and to keep the public hearing open
That's correct.
with no additional waivers or comments.
Would that be at the regular planning commission meeting of August 18?
We usually put some sort of.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should
we
put at
usually
least put a
define a
date
date,
on it.
right.
But is it too late to get on?
You have to, you guys have always said
But if
2
we
weeks.
table it, he can come to the next meeting.
Right, you can table it to the
There's
next
no
meeting.
requirements to bring it to the next meeting. It's
No.
not like it's a new project.
Yeah, no public hearing requirements, no further
Right.
notices necessary.
Oh.
So the only thing, I think you'd want to make a motion to include the date of August 18th.
Do I have to include the, okay.
Or just say the next planning
The
commission
next
meeting, which is,
regular-
which
okay,
is the
August
18th.
Yes, I'll amend my motion to include the date of August 18th, the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting.
But you have also in the past, when you've gotten date specific and the applicant for whatever reason has not been able to make that, they have asked to get onto the next
Yeah, and
meeting and
that's
you
not a
always
problem.
approve of that. So just so that's out there too.
So I will, again, amend my motion that August 18th is the earliest date.
So, Mr. Mulder has made a motion to table case number 12-22-PUD to the earliest date of August 18th. to allow the board to do our due diligence, continue our information gathering, do our homework, and to allow the applicant to decide if they want to return, having heard all of the comments from the public and so on. And to keep the public hearing.
And to keep the public hearing.
Okay, do I have that correct? May I have a second, please?
I will support that.
You'll support that, Ms. Oparka?
Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call please, Ms. Oparka. I'm sorry? All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. So we will see you August 18th at the earliest.
Orders don't come back.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
They're just close, so Michael,